Hello, good morning, good evening from wherever you are. Welcome to IPG KBA or Campus Bahasa Antarabangsas Hari Academic. And in conjunction with Hari Academic, we are going to bring you an intellectual discourse. All right. This intellectual discourse will present to you about nine, eight papers. All right. And these eight papers were actually published in our English language department's journal. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, each presenter would be given about 30 minutes. And this includes question and answer session right at the end. And these questions and answers, all right, will be addressed after the presentation. And it depends too, right, how many questions we can take looking at the time. Okay, without further ado, let's begin with the first presentation of the day entitled Comparison between ESL students and teachers' perception towards hey, let's speak web-based resources. And our beautiful presenter for this morning is Dr. Nurul Izzati Muhammad Fuad from the English Language Department. Dr. Nurul Izzati, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Irene. Okay, good morning, everyone. All right, it's a pleasure to be here. So please allow me to share my screen. All right, so Bismillahirrahmanirrahim and a very good morning to everyone. Okay, today let me share some snippets from my PhD thesis. Okay, so the paper that I choose to present today is titled Comparison Between ESL Students and Teachers' Perception Towards Hey, Let's Speak, Web-Based Resource. So speaking skills is considered crucial towards successful communication in English. And in order to carry out everyday negotiations and transactions, English as a second language ESL students should be able to master speaking skills at an early age. However, ESL students are facing great difficulties in speaking skills as they still demonstrate lack of English speaking competency in secondary school level. Hence, it is crucial to prepare a learning resource that will be able to provide sufficient support and assistance in improving the ESL students' speaking skills. Ladies and gentlemen, why web-based learning? So web-based learning is one of the available platforms, aside from apps, that could be used to deliver the input and activities on speaking skills. It is suitable to be used since the ESL students have high interest towards web-based resource and the materials provided online. Previous studies have shown that the Malaysian primary or secondary students both respond positively towards the use of ICT and internet-based resources in learning. Besides that, web-based learning would also ensure that the learning would be relevant, meaningful, interesting, fun, and motivating for the students. Now, I have been asked earlier, why didn't I come up with an app? So one of the reasons was during my study, I needed to actually carry out the study during school sessions. And students are not allowed to bring handphones or smartphones to school. Hence, that's why I opted to create a web-based learning resource for the study. So, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Hey Let's Speak. So, as I mentioned earlier, Hey Let's Speak is a resource that I have created for my PhD study in order to assist, provide help to the intermediate and low level ESL learners to improve their speaking skills. So, in this study, the ESL students and teachers were required to use Hey Let's Speak. So, this resource is available or was available on the internet and Rock VLE platform. So, um, I think we no longer have a Frog VLE platform right now. However, when the study was conducted, all selected schools are equipped with at least a computer room, with computers and internet facilities. The participants in this study needed to use Hey Let's Speak resource for at least 3 sessions before evaluating it. So the first session was whereby we introduced the resource to the students. They needed to go through the notes and watch the videos. Second session was where they needed to use the activities. They have to at least do 1 or 2 exercises and then do the recording exercise. Then for the last session, they needed to go through the quizzes and the games. Okay. So again, ladies and gentlemen, Hey Let's Speak was created to cater to the needs of Form 4 intermediate ESL students in Malaysia. So the web-based resource consisted of 3 main topics, which are taken from the KBSM syllabus. Topic 1, making plans and arrangement. Topic 2, solving problems. And topic 3, making and responding to complaints. So the language used in Hey Let's Speak is accessible to end users with B1 to B2 level, according to the CEFR classification. There are several sections in each topic, which consists of notes, videos, exercises, recording exercises, quiz, and games. So for notes, we also included vocabulary list for the students to assist them when they are reading the notes. We actually uploaded the videos onto the YouTube platform, then have it available in the website. For the exercises, they will fill in the blanks and the MCQ questions. For recording exercises, the students are or were able to record and upload their recording onto the website or email the recording to the instructor, and then the instructor would reply to their recording. So finally, for games, we use Kahoot. So ladies and gentlemen, what are the benefits of Hey Let's Speak? Alhamdulillah, after we have conducted the study, we found that there were several benefits, okay, especially in incorporating the voice recording, as it allows the students to receive sufficient feedback. Feedback, ladies and gentlemen, is important as it enables the students to recognize their strengths and weaknesses and allow them to improve their speaking skills. Furthermore, the usage of games, or in this case Kahoot, was able to improve the students' attention and motivation in learning. As the students increase their motivation, the efforts in using and practicing English speaking skills would also increase. Hence, the resource was able to provide the ESL students with opportunities to practice English speaking skills in a fun way and improve their speaking skills. So the two main purposes of the study was to compare the similarities between the ESL students and the teacher's perception towards Hey Let's Speak resource, and to compare the differences between ESL students and teachers' perception towards the Hey Let's Speak resource. So participants were from 4 ESL students and English teachers who have used Hey Let's Speak during the evaluation period. So total number of 12 ESL students and 10 English teachers were involved in the study. The Form 4 ESL students were intermediate to weak level students who have gone through all 3 sessions with the instructor. So the interview session was conducted on one-on-one basis after the implementation of Hey Let's Speak. The interview protocol was adapted from Rashida and Shuhaida's study. The data collected were then transcribed and analyzed thematically. So ladies and gentlemen, again, this study examined the ESL students and teachers' perception towards Hey Let's Speak, compare the similarities and differences between them. So, what are the findings? Alright, first let's talk about the similarities that we found between ESL students and the English teachers. It was an enjoyable experience when learning to speak in English. So, the main benefit found when using Hey Let's Speak is the enjoyment that ESL students and teachers experience when using it. The content and activities are presented in an attractive and user-friendly way, so the end users would enjoy themselves when using it. For example, based on the interview carried out, students mentioned that they were excited and happy when using the resource, and it was easy to use. Furthermore, watching the videos has helped the students as it allows them to imagine the situation. The teacher's interview findings also corroborated with the students' interview, whereby one of the teachers mentioned that it is fun to use. I feel happy because this website is very helpful, especially to students who wish to have their own initiative to improve themselves, especially in speaking skills. That brings us to the second similarity, which is to improve their English language proficiency. So Hey Let's Speak was able to provide assistance in improving ESL students' proficiency through the materials such as quizzes, notes, vocab lists, explanation, recording of conversation, and YouTube videos. For example, the notes are important for the pupils, such as the conversation, because it was easy to understand. The website resource is very good in helping pupils to speak in English. Another student mentioned that the explanation is easy to understand. Listening to the recording improves their pronunciation. The teachers also agree to this, as she thinks that if I teach speaking skills in class, sometimes I don't have the time to prepare the audio. So by using Hey Let's Speak, it would provide the students with the opportunity to listen to the correct pronunciation. Hey Let's Speak also provides opportunity for recording and getting feedback. As I mentioned earlier, students needed to record their dialogue, their conversation with a pair, and then upload it onto the website, and then the instructor would then provide the feedback to the students. This is very important in order to ensure that the students are getting sufficient input and scaffolding in order to improve their speaking skills. Furthermore, we found that Hey Let's Speak was able to provide enjoyable learning experience through games. We carried out Kahoot games during this study, And we found that the students were very happy because of the games. Okay. Teachers also cooperated with that, stating that the students seemed more engaged with the games, and it is easier to understand the content because of the games. So, ladies and gentlemen, throughout this study, we also found several weaknesses that we feel could have been improved in future studies. First was the slow internet connection. So, from the study, it was found that slow internet connection definitely affected the students' engagement level, and they become disinterested when the internet connection was slow or they couldn't log in. It seems that both teachers and students mentioned that this is one of the major problems throughout the study. Secondly, is the long notes in the notes section. One of the suggestions given was to actually change the notes to iThing maps or use iThing maps instead of just having the long notes in the notes section. Feel like the notes could have been shortened or make it simpler in order to suit the students' needs and level. So these are all the similarities that we found between the ESL students and teachers. So next, we go to the differences that we found between ESL students and teachers. So ladies and gentlemen, as I was carrying out the study, um, the teachers actually stated that they had difficulty in preparing the equipment and the availability of the computer labs for the web-based learning. Since this research was conducted using the Chromebooks or computers at schools, it is important for the teachers to be able to secure the lab for the web-based learning sessions. However, only limited number of computers and Chromebooks were available at each period of time. Sometimes the equipment might also not be working. Hence, it would be a problem for the teachers to ensure the session went successfully. Uh, if I may recall, one of the teachers actually mentioned that if she wanted to use it in class, she might need to prepare the earphones and the Chromebooks, and sometimes some of them were not working or available. Some of the rooms were not really well equipped, and then in certain schools, it is not easy for the teacher to book the computer lab because there are already from VLE subject, okay, that were already dedicated for the computer-based learning session. Okay, so they were competing between one another in order to book the computer lab. So this were one of the difficulties that we found throughout the study. Second difference that we found was the font size. Students had no problem with the font size. However, one of the teachers actually mentioned that she had a problem reading the notes and she thought that it was too small. So then she suggested that the content creator would make the font size bigger so it will be easier to read. So, ladies and gentlemen, next we have come to the recommendations. So, from the findings, we suggest that the future web or online resources would be able to incorporate games and videos, to use simple language that is suitable to the end user's level, to allow feedback and voice recordings among the end users. The content creators must also be aware to use suitable font size when preparing the resource. The internet connection, computer lab, and equipment should also be readily available for the ESL students to use in schools. One major suggestion that I feel that is very pertinent to us, especially after COVID, is to convert the web-based resource into an app. So I feel that once the resource is available in an app version, it is easier for everyone to use it. Content should also include CEFR to have more impact on the ESL students. So in conclusion, findings of the study indicate that there are more similarities between ESL students and teachers compared to differences regarding their perception towards hey, let's speak. They believe that Hey Let's Speak is able to provide the end users with input, enjoyable learning, recording, and feedback opportunities. However, the slow internet connection and long notes are some of the problems that might hinder the end user's experience when using Hey Let's Speak. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, I thank you.
Wow, Dr. Nurulizati, splendid. Okay, you had actually entered into the fracas of the, not activities. Okay, wow, must be very interesting. How long do you think you actually got to, carry out this project of yours?
Alhamdulillah, actually, I managed to finish it quite fast. It took me around 3 months to just carry out the
Mm,
study. But the whole process
yeah,
of preparing the content and so forth, it took me almost like 6 months to
yeah.
1 year.
Yeah, exactly. And with all the workload that we also have to manage, so yeah, oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah, okay. Looks like there are no questions so far. Okay, yeah, that means everybody is so clear and amazed and awed with your project. Yeah, with your yeah, with your research. Okay. So so if there are no questions, probably we should actually move on to the next presenter. Thank you very much, Dr. Nurul Izati, for your presentation of the first paper. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, right? Our second presenter for this session would be Dr. Tengku Analiza Tengku Zaman from the English Language Department of IPG Campus Bahasa Antarabangsa with her research paper entitled The Representations of English Language Teachers in Malaysia Education Blueprint 2013 to 2025. Dr. Tengku Analiza, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Irene. Allow me to share my screen here. Okay, as Madam Irene has mentioned, the title of my presentation is, as you can see on the screen, to make it, to simplify it, it's basically looking at how MOE depicts or portrays English language teachers in the blueprint. Before I proceed with my presentation itself, with the study itself, I would like to tell the spectators, the audience, that it is actually part of my PhD thesis, which was entitled "The Representation of English Language in the Malaysia Education Blueprint 2030 to 2025, a CDA perspective." I had 3 research questions, as you can see on the screen. This study that I'm presenting today actually falls under the research question 2. So all these research questions, 3 research questions, were designed to locate how English language is perceived by the Ministry of Education, or MOE, in the blueprint. Right, so for each of these research questions, I had the methods of analysis, whereby the first research question, I used Fackloff and Fackloff 2012 argumentation analysis, or AA, and research question 2, also a textual analysis based on textual analysis by Van Leeuwen, 2008 social actor framework, and the third one is actually a thematic analysis based on interviews and think alouds, which I use from the think aloud protocol approach. So all these I had hoped to answer or look into how English language is perceived by MOE. Okay, so basically it's as I mentioned just now, the Fackloff and Fackloff argumentation analysis. and the Van Leeuwen's framework actually come under the umbrella of CDA. CDA is critical discourse analysis. Now, just a brief overview on CDA. It looks at addressing truths, spoken and written. It aims at making a difference, especially to society, and then it intends to reveal the alleged implications that come with the discourse, and it analyzes and investigates e-discourses. It basically focuses on making the opaque more transparent. CDA views discourses as socially shaped and influenced by social practices. By nature, CDA is interdisciplinary, where it goes across all and various disciplines. If, for example, if you're looking into discourses pertaining to financial texts, so financial principles are all built into it, analyzed, and the society and everything, all that you have to analyze all those into to do a CDA analysis. Now, under CDA, there are various models, and one of it is, two of it which I've used in my research was the Fackloff's model, argumentation analysis, and this one is Van Leeuwen's. Why I didn't use the Fackloff's model was because there were some things that were not, for example, there's these social actors, which are actually people who are involved in the discourse. I looked through Fackloff's argumentative analysis and found that they focused more on the text producer rather than the people who are involved in discourse, people who are affected or in the discourse itself. So Van Leeuwen's social actors framework does that. It's more robust. It's built to analyze all social actors, whether they are explicitly stated or implicitly stated, or whoever's involved in the discourse. Okay, so for this study itself that I did was focusing on the teachers, English language teachers. Okay, and this is the framework. Okay, I can't go through all of this whole thing because it'll take time, and we are limited. There's limited time for me to present this whole thing. So just to give an overview, it starts with, you start with observing if the social actors are included in the discourse, either they're included or excluded. Included here means they are explicitly stated in the text or in the statement. And if they're excluded, are they being suppressed or backgrounded, which I will look into later. So the positioning of the social actors are basically identified by this list by Van Leeuwen. Now, social actors here, it is where we looked at the elements. Okay, now the elements here focuses on social actors, whereby we analyze, you analyze the social actors from linguistics aspects, the immediate context or situation that the actor is in, or in the context, also in the context of culture. The meanings belong to the culture and not much of the language. That is Van Leeuwen's perspective. And when you observe these, the representations of these social actors, you have to look at the cultural context, the context that they are in, the situation that they're in. And social actors here include the, as I mentioned earlier, text producers, those who are mentioned explicitly and those who are not mentioned explicitly, but they are involved in that discourse or the statements or the text. And as all CDA models, they rest on the belief or the principle that discourse is a social practice. Now, how I ran my analysis was, I had this checklist as in what I'm showing on the screen, is a table where I looked at the statements from the text, categorized them, and then the textual context and the purpose of that statement or that statement made. Okay, I scanned through the text. I focused only on the language section of chapter 4 of the blueprint. Okay, and the statements were basically related to English language teachers, such as policies, initiatives, or the teachers that they have to carry out, and the changes they had to make as their role as teachers. Right? Then I matched the statements to the representations in the Van Leeuwen's framework, and identified the context that the statements were in. It was either in measures or actions, or the circumstances that they are in. Okay, and finally, I interpreted the reasons and purpose of these representations. Now, the results of the analysis is there are many, but for this paper alone, I focused on 4, which stood out more, okay, than the rest. First is the representation of inclusion, whereby I looked at the circumstances and measure and actions, and that runs through the whole analysis. Yeah, representations of exclusion by backgrounding, representations through assimilation by aggregation, and lastly, representation by activation. Okay, this how I basically tabled it and presented it in my thesis. Okay, representations of inclusion. This one concerns social actors who are mentioned explicitly in the text. Right, the one in the dark blue columns are actually the statements taken from the blueprint, whereas the results of the analysis is in the lighter hue on the right side of this table. So basically, to keep it simple in this, to keep it short and simple here, the teachers were mentioned, but somehow they were not that active. They were more passive in the situation, in the context itself. And if you look at the second statement, there are numbers there, which actually is another in another category, which I will look at it later. And this statement was actually to substantiate the first statement. Okay, now this one is the representation of inclusion in the circumstances. Yeah, and the circumstance was a mismatched situation between the teachers being deployed, where they were being deployed, which schools. Now here the teachers were explicitly stated, and the mismatch is interestingly, the people or the personnel involved in the mismatch were not mentioned in the statement, because for the benefit of our international audience, the MOE adopts the top-down approach because we are a centralized education system. Okay, and what normally happens is that new teachers especially, they are assigned to schools, and it's organized and done by a division in the headquarters. And therefore, teachers are just assigned to schools. And there have been cases whereby teachers who are assigned and the school they were assigned to found that they need teachers in other subjects. So that is where the mismatch is mentioned. As I said earlier, that the other people were involved in it were not mentioned, but the teachers were explicitly stated. Okay, so the next statement here actually supports statement, number 3 statement here. Okay, and it focused on the unqualified teachers as the cause of mismatch. Right, and okay, and you have the aggregation category as well. Sorry, the statement is also under the category of representation of assimilation by aggregation. Okay, the takeaway here is basically looking at the teacher's level of proficiency, and there are other factors in the situation, but somehow the other people, the other personnel responsible are not mentioned. Right now, in representations of inclusion in measures and actions that are being carried out, okay, are in this statement, whereby which concerns the upskilling of English language teachers, the proficiency, sorry, and they are basically mentioned quite frequently for initiatives, especially when in regards to the upskilling of the level of proficiency. And that's another one under the teachers' pedagogical and methodological practices. Teachers were also mentioned in the actions, and but they are mentioned in these initiatives, but they are limited to only a few of the initiatives. So the takeaway here is that for MOE, the English language proficiency of teachers is important, and for them, an effective and competent English language teacher has excellent proficiency level, and my MOE's priority is to provide qualified English language teachers. So here, this one is another one, representations of exclusion by backgrounding, whereby the teachers are not mentioned explicitly. They are somewhere in the text, or sometimes they are in another text, but you know that they are involved because the content of the statement there is actually concerns the social actors. So in here, you can see that for measures and actions, in the pedagogical and methodological practices, here the teachers are not mentioned, but all those related to teachers, because teachers are the implementers, are there. So hence you kind of know that teachers cannot be taken out of the statement. They are involved. Okay, and so the focus more on this one was more on the actions by MOE. Then we have another one in circumstances. Okay, they were excluded, but by backgrounding for the circumstances whereby they had the instructional time and delivery of lessons. Okay, the focus was on the situation of time and the situations which have led to these actions being taken. So the takeaway on this one is teachers are implementers of the initiatives and plans. They only receive directives to implement the initiatives and plans, and then focused on the initiatives, and the focus was more on the initiatives and plans to transform the teaching and learning of English in classrooms, and they they have addressed those issues. Right, the focus is more, as to sum it up, basically initiatives rather than the people who are implementing it. Right, so we go into assimilations, representation through assimilation by aggregation. Hereby there are numbers next to the social actors, basically to quantify the social actors, or the social actors, sorry. And here you can see the statements had numbers associated with the teachers, English language teachers, 7,500. You have the 30%. You have the 3,600. They are all to show that how many teachers are involved. English language teachers are involved in that circumstance, in those circumstances. This is another one, another example. On the upskilling of the English language proficiency on the measures taken. 61,000 English language teachers, and there's the 7,500 teachers. And here, if you notice, there's the word significant numbers of teachers are put in there, and not a number. Okay, so we have another one here. All right, then here's another example. So to put it in a nutshell, it's to assert their assertion, to attest the assertion that these numbers are concrete, to convince the reader of their claim, and that these need to be addressed, and actions have to be taken. The funny thing is, there were some parts where they were not, the percentage or the numbers were not taken, were not stated, and they used significant numbers instead. And this leaves the question of transparency. So they seem to be, there seem to be focus on certain numbers, and for certain circumstances, they did not put in the numbers. So lastly is the representation of activation here. Throughout that chapter 4, that section of chapter 4, the language section of chapter 4, the only thing I found that was the teachers, the English language teachers had active role was this statement, whereby they are represented as active dynamic forces in an activity. This is what representation by activation here. And this one, it's located within the initiatives of tailoring the pedagogical styles. And that was it, basically, focusing on that. So teachers were given, my takeaway is that they were given limited amount of autonomy, specifically only on pedagogical styles for language learning, despite them being a crucial role as implementers of the policy and initiatives. All right, so to summarize the whole findings, basically, the takeaway of it, is that implementation, English language teachers are only suggested as implementers of policy, but not part of the policy. They are not an integral part of the teaching and learning process of the students and the education system. Teachers are not viewed as partners. So this one somehow does not seem to be in line with MOE's objectives, which is raising and strengthening the teaching profession and quality. Teachers' autonomy is limited to tailoring their pedagogical styles for language learning. And it's spoken of in the blueprint, but the analysis doesn't show it. My analysis doesn't show it. And but according to Sachs 2001, to promote teacher professionalism, teachers have to be given more autonomy in their profession to allow them to be more active. Okay, and Sachs also mentioned in 2015 that teachers need to be involved in systematic inquiry, develop strategies, constantly improve and be innovative in their practices, share the practice to develop teacher professionalism. Thomas, 2005, says that teachers need to also be active in the policy making or reconstructing teaching as an active profession to enable them to rethink their professional identity. Because currently, Salmi and Yusuf, 2021, despite MOE's efforts in developing teacher professionalism, there are still pressing issues that show such as, resistance towards change amongst teachers, difficulty in integrating subjects due to time and teaching materials, that is preventing them from teacher professionalism taking place. So perhaps in this manner, teachers can be viewed as partners and allow them to take an active role in the education system. And not just merely as receiving instructions and implementing policies and initiatives. And with that, I thank you very much. Okay, I'll stop sharing now.
Oh, wow. Dr. Tengku. Okay,
Yes.
now that was really an in-depth study, yeah? Okay,
Yeah.
ladies and gentlemen, this is the second presenter of the day, and we are going to showcase 8 articles that have been actually published in the ELT journal, Practices and Insights. And this is the one that these presenters are actually talking about. And Dr. Tengku, you actually spoke in detail about teachers' representations. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think we are actually facing a lot of problems, and it's not so easy. Like, you just teach the language, and okay, yeah, the students are supposed to catch the language, and a lot of things. And I think along the years of teaching, you have got a good number of years teaching too. I think we have actually seen how difficult it is to actually
Yes.
actually get the proficiency down to the students. Yeah, it's not so easy, and especially now, working from home and students studying from home, we get to see a lot more of problems there. Okay, and all are cooking in the pot. Okay, right. So probably you would want to say something about this question. Yeah, all right. What are the ways probably that would help enhance teachers' pedagogical competency, that they are deemed to be important agents in teaching and learning? So we are just looking at the pedagogical competencies. Okay, so actually they are also very important agents in teaching and learning, right? So what is your
Yeah,
take on this, Dr. Tengku?
they they are important. That's why they need to be involved in the policy. They need to understand the government's policy, MOE's policy as well, and be involved in it, because education research is not only by researchers. Teachers need to be involved because they are the ones on the grounds. And when they're on the grounds, they are the first people to know what's going on. And therefore, they need to know, they need to impart what they know, and the authorities need to accept it and understand the situation, because if not, there'll always be a mismatch. And the pedagogical aspects is important, because if not, nothing happens. And if you're talking about how they can go about being upskilling their pedagogical knowledge and all, it's a lot of, one is knowing what the government wants, what the MOE wants, as well as looking at the global education, what's going around in the world, and adopting it and accepting that you need to change.
Yeah.
Because currently everywhere in the world, even I think it's Korea, and a few countries, they are already moving on to new things, new ways of teaching, new ways of assessing the children. No more the tests and papers and all. Even Singapore is going through that, despite Singapore being very gung-ho about tests and assessments. They are all already going to formative assessments rather than summative assessments. So we need, for me, I understand that pedagogical aspects, you need to know what the country wants, what MOE wants, and what what's going on around you. If not, and then also, of course, we read up, articles, and that goes without saying then. But you need to know what's the need of the country. Yeah. I hope that answers the
Definitely.
question.
Yes. Yeah, I see that too. Yeah, I see that getting on. And like what you were saying, other countries have, like, I think that's not something that's happening only now, not recent. It's not something recent, right? Yeah, they have
Yeah.
been actually moving. I think we dealt with this when we were doing literature. Yeah, it
Yeah.
was really a little far away from the normal, exams and all that. Yeah. Okay. There's one more question for you. Yes, Dr.
Yes.
Tengku.
I
Okay.
see.
What are the main problems faced by the English teachers based on your study?
Okay. Now, if you look at the blueprint, you will see that our government or MOE is basically going towards 21st century learning and all those using ICT and all. So the teachers that I interviewed, one was in Terengganu. Okay, they basically said to me, this school is actually it's one of the grade A schools, if I'm not mistaken, and it's in Kuala Terengganu itself. Okay, and they receive a lot of, they're supposed to do this, that, implementation, the dual language program, everything. They were, because they are so-called the grade A school. So what happened was they told me the government wants, the MOE wants so many things, but yet the basic like internet connection is, they don't have internet connection, despite them being in Kuala Terengganu Central. So most of the time, the ones that I asked, the ones I interviewed, basically they said infrastructure. They want ICT teaching and all those, but infrastructure is not there. And that's the funny thing, because according to the blueprint, I can't remember which page, I remember that teachers' points of view were also taken in view, but yet they seem to have a mismatch in this area. So basically they said it's, you want to implement all these initiatives, but there's no support. No supports, infrastructure, there are so many things involved, writing and all the paperwork and everything. But all these new initiatives and implementations whatsoever, the teachers do recognize that they are important, but they are stretched, basically. Because all these need time, you can't do it. It's not an overnight thing. It's not an overnight success. It takes time. Well, as they say, Rome was not built in one day. So, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, that's right. It's not too easy, whatever even the training that we give and all, it all depends even on whatever schools that they are posted to, the kind of background the kids are coming from also matters a lot. And this, we can do this much. Yeah, but we're trying our best to.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, Dr. Tengku and Eliza, thank you very much for being here with us. All right.
Thank
and
you.
presenting
Thank
your
you, Madam
paper.
Irene.
All right. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. Okay. And that ends our second presenter. Okay. The third presenter for the day, all right, is Dr. Noor Hakima Kaisa Ahmad. Okay. Also from IPG Campus Bahasa Antarabangsa, from the research department herself. Okay, right. Okay. And her paper is entitled A Systematic Review on Teachers' Personal Role Identity, Opportunities for Future Research. Dr. Nur Hakima, the screen is yours.
Thank you, Madam Irene, the MC for today. I may look not that presentable, so I'm going to take off my mask here. All right, give me a few seconds. All right, just a moment, please. Right. Good morning from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia. I'm Hakima, and I would like to share what I have found last year in one of the articles that I published, as stated by Irene. It was published in ELT Journal, Practices and Insights 2020. So the title of my presentation is A Systematic Review on Teachers' Professional Role Identity, or PRI, Opportunities for Future Research. This is part of my literature review for my big area of study for my PhD. So I'm going to start my sharing session now. Right, so the overall presentation consists of 4 sections. I will start with the introduction, followed by how I review the articles that I analyzed. And then there are some major themes that I would like to highlight. And finally, I will share with you what is next for future research. So before we go further, I would like to again highlight to you why identity. So I assume that the audience majority of you are teachers, so we need to know what is identity all about. So teacher identity refers to a construct, mental image or model of what being a teacher means that guide teachers' practices as they aim to enact being a teacher through specific arts of teacher identity. So to reflect yourself as a teacher is an art, and it requires not only skills, not only experience, but other elements such as pedagogical, content knowledge, belief, and knowledge about yourself as a teacher. Now, again, before I go further, in order to understand who teachers are, so Varghese, Morgan, Johnston, and Johnson proposed that in order to understand teachers, we need to have a clear sense of who they are. All right, so that's why we need to have identity in our workplace and in our what we do in daily life as well. So the scope and objective of my presentation will cover the existing studies on language teacher identities, and I have only 19 published journal articles, which I will explain how I come to this number, 19, right? And these are 19 articles, they were published and indexed in Scopus within 10 years. So what I did throughout these research and analysis, I synthesized the research scopes and I tried to understand the PRI of enacted professional role identity displayed or enacted by the teacher, and I tried to look for the factors that underpin teachers' identity construction. So what they do and what they went through as a teacher from the second language teacher education up to the current workplace that constructs the identity of a teacher. So in the end, I will analyze the findings on professional role identity, particularly focusing on the research tools as well as the methodologies employed for these within these 19 articles. All right, so before we go further, I still have 2 research questions, although some people believe that, oh, this is just a review. We do not need a research question. In systematic review, we do need research questions. So my first research question is, what are the themes in the existing studies on teachers' professional role identities? And then I will combine my discussion with the second question, what are the directions for future research in language teachers' role which reflects their identities? So let's move on to the statement of problem now. In general, for the past 20 odd years, for the past 2 decades, researchers have emphasized how teacher identity was constructed. I think if we look further, for the past 2 decades, that's what the focus is all about. However, what is less known is about the realization of role. Teachers have identities, but they perform different roles. So in order to understand the role or realization of role identities and factors that possibly influence the construction of identities among English language teachers, this is less known, less discussed, less examined. So what I will do throughout this presentation is I'm going to extend what the existing research or a review as conducted by Izzadinia, Langveld et al., and also Yuan 2018. So this is an extension of what the previous researchers, not only on systematic review, but on teacher identities in general, it will contribute to the extension of what next to be done if we want to understand further about language teacher identity. Right, so now let's move on to the review process. In a systematic review, we need to include the inclusion and exclusion parts of the studies, meaning to say, what I review is actually article journals with empirical data. I did not go through a systematic review article or a review article. They are articles or published journal articles with empirical data, and I specify the timeline. So what I read or examined is just articles published within 10 years. And I excluded articles from the review type of article. I excluded book series, book, even chapters in a book. And I also excluded conference proceedings. So these are the inclusion and exclusion criteria for systematic review. Next, I will look into I will rely on Scopus. These articles are also indexed by Scopus, and I specify the year, which is the search is from 2010 until 2020. And I specify the keywords in the databases. So the keywords are teacher identity, non-native English speaking teachers, and teacher education program. Why non-native English speaking teachers? Because I myself is a non-native speaker and English is my second language. Therefore, I specifically zoom in my examination on non-native English speaking teachers. So the first round of my examination, I found 78 journal articles or 78 studies based on the 3 keywords that I specified in my search. So based on the title and the keyword, I reviewed the abstract and I found 78 relevant articles. However, when I closely examined the keywords in relation to L2 or non-native English-speaking teachers, I critically examined only 19 studies and I focus on the second language setting. All right. So based on my examination and analysis, which is thematic analysis, I managed to identify 3 major themes, namely multiple roles in teaching, exhibiting self in personal and professional development, and the third major theme is exhibiting identity through professional beliefs. So all in all, I managed to these themes are derived based on the existing sub-themes, and the sub-themes actually highlighted the idea of identity development through social engagement. What I mean here is there's element of interaction between teacher and teacher, senior teacher and junior teacher, or a novice teacher and the mentor, or pre-service teachers doing practicum. So there's elements of social engagement with the school head, for example, the mentor, teacher and students. So these are the elements of social engagement that I'm referring to. All right, now let's go further into the first theme. Out of 19 journal articles, 10 actually reflected facilitating self through language learning experience. This is the first sub-theme under the major theme. And then I also noticed about another sub-theme, which is creating conducive environment. And the third one is sustaining interactions in teaching. What do I mean by facilitating self through language learning experience? For example, in in a study by Devins in 2000, Devins et al., 2018, this group of researchers discovered that when teachers, for example, experience too much emphasis on grammar lesson in English language lesson, so what happens is that it affects the teacher. When they become teachers, they refuse to teach grammar or refuse to embed grammar in their lesson because they went through very negative experience. So to facilitate self as a teacher, they rely on their past experience. So that is just an example. Yeah? For creating a conducive environment, in one of the articles, for example, by Yuan and Burns, for example. So Yuan and Burns noticed that in order to perform specific role, teacher during interview will verbally mention that, oh, they changed their role from active learner to a literacy teacher, for example. And they have specific reason why they changed their role, because the way they communicate with the learners, a primary school teacher, so they need to change the role so that they can assist children to not only read, but understand the content. So that is meant by creating less threatening learning environment for children to learn, for example. Now, the third theme, which is sustaining interactions in teaching, I can provide you one example. For example, by Sternberg and Marinan in 2020, they reported that, for example, pre-service teachers, they have too many ideas because they learn too many theories during second language teacher education. So because of that, they are not in conflict, but they try and learn through trial and error. So based on this experience, they try to develop their interaction, and in the end, when they know they can perform well in the workplace, for example, during practicum, they try to sustain this identity. for example, to meet the expectation of workplace. So these interactions, either from pre-service teachers to the mentor or pre-service teachers and the school head, for example, it develops the roles, and in a way, it also multiplies the role as a teacher. So the second major theme is exhibiting self in personal and professional development. So out of 6 research articles that I analyzed, for example, I can give you one example: contextual aspects of teacher identity. What does it mean? Contextual aspects are closely related to the social-cultural, the ethnic, the religious belief, even socioeconomic status of the community, including the teacher. So these aspects actually develop the teacher identity within the teacher. For example, in Gary Beckersen's 2016 study, he found that the teacher in his study keeps on changing the role because she realizes that as a non-native speaker who is teaching in New Zealand, but her students are actually immigrants. So what happens is that she tries as much as possible to make sure the immigrant learners feel less threatened and they enjoy learning, although English is not their mother tongue. The children are willing to learn. So, like I said, socioeconomic, social cultural, and even ethnicity play a role in exhibiting the self as a teacher. So the second sub theme, model for teaching through experience. I can share with you one research from Moody, for example, Ian Moody 2016, where this teacher enjoys her learning experience when she was in school and also during a teacher education program. So the positive experience that this teacher went through becomes the model of what to do in the classroom as a teacher. So to exhibit self as a professional and also self as a person, language learning experience actually plays a role in developing the teacher identity. So the next sub theme in this major theme is acceptance and visibility in institution and community. This again is closely related to junior teacher, or teachers who are in the system but with less than 5 years. So to be accepted in the society and to be visible in the community is actually important for a teacher to feel not vulnerable. So vulnerability in highlighting or projecting self as a teacher is very important for the junior teacher. The reason is when they feel they are not vulnerable, when they feel they are visible, they feel they are important and accepted. Ideas, their suggestions are accepted by the school head or by the mentor teacher. They know they can work well and they can perform. But once they feel taken back, or when they feel threatened by their suggestions, that is one of the reasons for teachers, especially the junior teachers, decided to leave the profession. Okay, so let's move on to the third theme, which is exhibiting identity through professional beliefs. So belief is closely related to teachers' pedagogical content knowledge. If you refer to Turner Bisset 2001 extended version of Lee Schulman's PCK model, she highlighted there are actually 11 pedagogical content knowledge, types of knowledge in pedagogical content knowledge, and she highlighted one of them is beliefs. And beliefs is also closely related to identity or teacher self. So because of that, this theme is generated from the 3 sub-themes that I gathered from my analysis. So among pre-service teachers, for example, identity modification is very crucial to be accepted during practicum or to be accepted as a junior teacher. This is very important for the young teachers or for the junior teachers. So identity modification plays a role, and typically they are aware of why they need to change the role from time to time. So what kind of role we are referring here? For example, during submitting coursework, they are doing practicum at the same time doing coursework. So they need to balance the self as a student or as a learner and also as a teacher in workplace during practicum. So they need to modify their identity. On one part, they are student. On the other part, they are a teacher, but not a full-fledged teacher. So it actually ended up with conflicts, whether or not they can perform their role concurrently. And during practicum, there's also interesting observation in these research articles that I analyzed. Decision making and also socialization, these two are also important factors for teachers to reflect and then to display and enact their identity. So practicum experience is very crucial for teachers to be sure and to be firm of what kind of decision is relevant in their context. For example, if they are teaching in primary school, for example, what kind of materials needed by the learners, what kind of assistance needed by the learners, they need to be firm in decision making. And sometimes their proposal or idea was actually not accepted by the school mentor because of the expectation of the school. So because of that, practical experience and decision making is very important for the pre-service teachers. Now, the third sub theme is closely related to positive emotions. Positive emotion is very important for pre-service teachers, particularly because from these positive emotions, it will develop their interest further as a full-fledged teacher. So what happens when they fail to manage positive emotions? The skill is for them to be able to negotiate any conflicting emotions. Say, for example, in Yuan and Lee 2016, they compare that a teacher sometimes will shift their role from a student teacher to a student-centered teacher to teacher-centered teacher. So they, from time to time, they will change their role according to what they observe is needed or required in the classroom. However, some schools, they have specified that in the lesson, it has to be just teacher-centered or just student-centered. So this brings up a conflict among the pre-service teachers. So practicum and practicum and decision making, they are also related to the development of positive emotions for the pre-service teachers. Therefore, exhibiting identity through professional belief is very important, because the moment they feel that their belief cannot be enacted in the workplace, the tendency for them to leave this profession is very high. So besides the three major themes that I have exhibited, I would like to highlight there's also methodological review that I observed in among these 19 studies. So based on the inclusion and exclusion criteria, I discovered 19 published articles. One important fact is that the 19 articles are all qualitative approach, and it involved small-scale study. What I mean by small-scale study is, as you can see, the number of participants is either 1 up to 18. So it varies from 1 to 18 participants, and it involves in-service and also pre-service teachers. However, when we look closely in terms of duration, the duration starts from 4 weeks up to 2 years. So from my observation, I can conclude that the longitudinal studies, 1 year or 2 year duration, the findings are more insightful, because it provides, the studies provide solid justification of how the teacher's identity developed and modified, and also keep changing in a way, because within 2 years, the researcher can truly analyze what happens and what influenced the teachers to shift the role, right? So another interesting discovery from these 19 published articles, the data are actually self-reported data, which the data came from sources such as interviews, stimulated recall interviews, journals, digital logs, documents, and all of these data, they were analyzed using thematic or grounded theory analysis. However, I would like to highlight that out of 19, there's no new or innovative way to triangulate the data. Of course, there are more than one source of data. However, there's no innovative way that we can learn and we can modify to suit our second language context from these 19 methodological sections that I analyzed. Right. So because of that, I would like to go further in for my discussion. My systematic review is about language teacher identity, and for your information, the 19 articles that I analyzed, they are from the Western context and from developed countries except for Vietnam, surprisingly. So the diversified second language context were also conducted using qualitative approach. And these are some of the countries involved in the 19 articles that I review: Australia, Brazil, Finland, New Zealand, USA, Netherlands, Slovakia, Sweden, South Korea, China, Singapore, and Vietnam. So what I would like to highlight is that if you notice, the research location are all from the developed nations except for Vietnam. So as a neighboring country, I find that the research location actually plays a very significant role to highlight the importance of looking further and in depth into EFL and ESL teacher community and teacher identity. Next, I would also like to highlight, to understand teacher identity and professional role identity, it is a complex process, because when you look at the discussion in all of these published articles, we know that when it involves interaction to highlight the self or the identity, it might affect the conversation between student teacher and teachers social interaction. Not only that, when we highlight the exchanges, the conversation between teacher and student in the classroom, for example, we need to closely look at the meaning within that context. So we need to interpret it within second language context. That's why there are times when the teachers switch to the mother tongue. And there is a reason for doing it. Switching to mother tongue is not a bad idea at all in order to highlight the teacher's self or professional role identity. So if we go further, in 2019, Richards and Wilson highlighted that when you see these type of exchanges between teacher and student, for example, in the classroom, the conversation can be classified as trans-identitying. That's what the term is. What does it mean? Trans-identitying, in terms of teacher exchange in classroom, is the teacher's attempt to show stance and affiliation. I'm a teacher, I need to help my students, and this is why I'm doing it. So that's the idea of showing stance and affiliation. So therefore, what is more important is for second language teacher education and second language context, we need to explore the construction of identity further in relation to the personalized teaching model. So there is a reason why the teachers switch, for example. There's a reason why the teacher will pay close attention to one particular group of learners. So we need to refer to what underpins the teacher's belief. That's why we need to look at the teaching model. So if we go further to looking at the PSD or pre-service teachers, there are seven studies that I noticed. The focus is very much into the emotional experiences of the pre-service teachers and the conception of teacher identity among pre-service teachers. Now, if you notice, for example, a study by Rodriguez in 2018, these group of researchers argued that mentor teachers who practice power hierarchy contributed less as active agents in developing understanding of realities in language teaching. However, in 2020, another group of researchers, Marinan and Stenberg, they argued that positive emotional experiences influence the pre-service teachers to become more aware of the importance of pedagogical interaction between teachers and students. So if you notice, these two findings give or tell us the importance of emotional experience. Once the teacher feel negative emotion, it might affect the development of professional role identity. However, when the pre-service teachers experience or enjoyed positive emotional experiences, it might develop them to be more aware of their own pedagogical interaction. So, meaning to say, we can conclude that positive and negative emotions experienced during teaching practicum led to various emotional and cognition growth. Therefore, emotional support and other conflicting emotions are very significant to be explored further. So not only on the teaching model, but also the conflicting or the type of emotional support that should be given to the pre-service teachers need to be looked further. So all in all, past studies only examine the experienced teachers' teaching model. However, what is lacking is the how should I say, the ongoing experience can possibly be the model of what to teach in the classroom. At the same time, we also realize that positive and negative influencing factors of identities construction need to be looked further because second language teacher education is significant in establishing teachers with solid personal practical theories when they become full-fledged teachers. That's why we need more conclusive idea and studies to capture the dynamism of pre-service teachers' identity construction and why, or the specific factors why they developed or why they decided to leave the profession. All right, now let's move on to the last section, which is teacher research. First, I would like to argue that more studies are needed to review professional identity in relation to the emotional experiences, because we need to understand as teachers, experience on pre-service teachers, we need to actually understand the influencing factors of pre-service teachers' identity construction, particularly in primary school context in Malaysia. This is very lacking in Malaysia. And then we also need to look at the triangulation in qualitative data. Because of the absence of innovative analytical approaches, the data were triangulated. However, we need a more innovative idea in data triangulation. So we need to consider alternative form of reflective tool to promote reflexivity on the self, on the emotional experiences, and also the teacher's beliefs in personal and professional practical knowledge. And lastly, in the future, it is also possible if you are, for example, teaching in primary school context, it's good to look further into conducting studies on language teacher identities, but try to incorporate or look into the types of schools. For example, in Malaysia, we have the national school, the national type school, school in the hospital, for example, and there are other types of schools. For example, religious schools, sekolah agama. So we can actually look further into different types of school setting so that we understand further the variation in different school contexts. So thank you for listening, and I welcome any questions if there is any. Okay,
So,
let me
yes,
check. Irene, are you going to check for the, just in case, any questions?
yes, Dr. Akiba.
Yeah.
Dr. Akiba, can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, definitely. I
yeah,
can hear
all
you.
right. Because there's some serious internet problem here.
Oh,
Okay,
I
yes.
see.
The question is, what would be the challenges in terms of adapting to their
Challenges.
roles? So, Dr. Akima, see if you have any take on this.
Okay, challenges in adapting roles. All right. All I can say, it depends on the teacher. For example, if the teacher is doing practicum, yeah, so the challenges most of the time is about conflicting of ideas or conflicting of belief, ideas, or even emotions. Because as we know, pre-service teachers, everything that they learn during second language teacher education, they are just, those concepts are just theories. So when they come to school in real context, they feel overwhelmed and they wanted to try most of the concepts that they learned during SLTE, second language teacher education. So the conflict started to arise when either, for example, the schools have its specific expectation and they have their own belief. So the conflicts in this, if the teachers could not manage the conflict between their personal belief and the school belief, they need to be creative in adapting themselves to what the school needs. That is for preschool teachers, pre-service teachers. But for experienced teachers, most of the time they try to negotiate. So one of the how should I say, one of the traits of identity is actually identity will overlap. Identity can also shift. So sometimes the teacher, those who are experienced teachers, yeah, they shift their role from let's say a classroom teacher to a negotiator. For example, if they notice, for example, other students in another class, they have a good sample of essays, for example. So they will go to the teacher, request for a sample, and they will come back to the class and share it with the learners. So that attempt of asking for sample, sharing it with their own class, that is what we call negotiation of identity. They switch to another role so that they can be the intermediator or the middle person for the learners to learn further or well with a sample. Irene? I think we have connectivity issue perhaps. Okay, let's wait for Madam Irene. I'm not sure whether she can hear me. Calling for Madam Irene.
Okay, I have
Okay.
now returned to
Hi.
my home station.
All right. So, Madam Irene,
Yes,
is
yes,
there any more
Hakima.
questions?
I could actually
Yes.
hear you earlier, but there was some problem
Oh,
with ours from this end. Yeah.
I see. All right.
Yeah. Okay, talking about technology. Yeah. Okay. Right. There was
Understood.
some problem with the
Okay.
connectivity. Yeah. All right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hakima. Okay.
Welcome. You're most
We are
welcome.
done with the third presentation of the day. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, all these papers are, as I've told you before, are actually published in the ELD Journal 2020. Yeah, so number of 9 papers were presented or published, sorry, and actually there will be 8 presenters. Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Hakima. Thank you,
You're most
Lisa. All right. Uh, Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are now going into our fourth presentation for the day. This one is also going to be very interesting, and the title is Using Short Stories as a Tool to Create Awareness on Issues Pertaining to Premarital Sex. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Dr. Gunalingam Krishnan from the English Language Department, IPGKBA. Dr. Guna, the screen is yours. Thank you.
Good day, everyone. Am I audible? On Irene, am I audible? Okay, let me just check the thing, yeah. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, good day. I'm going to thank you very much for giving this opportunity for me to talk about something which I did in my PhD. And this is an extract from that thesis, Tackling Issues Pertaining to Premarital Sex Through Short Stories. Right, let's just look at this reality check, yeah? Mariam, 17, should have been preparing for her SPM exams when we met her in February last year. But instead, she was about 6 months pregnant and living in a shelter home for unwed mothers, surrounded by other teenage girls she barely knew. Instead of learning maths and science, Mariam was learning how to diaper and burp a baby, using a fellow shelter girl's newborn as practice. But the biggest lesson she had learned was that having sex can get you pregnant, something she didn't really know before. I didn't think that I would get pregnant. That's why I never insisted on a condom, she said. I wasn't ready to have sex, but my boyfriend kept asking for it. I didn't know how to say no, so I relented. Now Mariam is stuck in the shelter. She can only stay for up to 3 months after giving birth. After that, she has to make way for another expectant, unwed teenager. There are a lot of pregnant girls, so I'll have to make way for them. But I don't know what I'm going to do after, she said. Mariam's story is not uncommon, according to Vimi Yasmin, founder of Rumah Kita, a shelter for unwed mothers. Most teenagers have sex without thinking it will result in pregnancy, she said. There's no thorough sex education in school. In secondary school, when they teach sex in biology, it's too technical and academic and not very helpful to understand what happens when you have sex. Now, this is something, an extract taken from Rage, Malaysia Needs Sex Education, April 30, 2018. Now, that brings us to the research background. Level of awareness and knowledge on sexual issues among teenagers in Malaysia is still low, right? That's the key point here. A lot of misconceptions about issues pertaining to sexuality. Traditional views on sex and taboos against open discussions of sexual issues, these two challenge accurate health information reaching adolescents. Lack of sexuality education is believed to be the reason that is attributed to sexual misbehaviors. Among these misbehaviors, promiscuity at a young age, teenage pregnancy, and babies being abandoned, and even sex crimes like rape and molest among teenagers. In Malaysia, introduction of sex and sexual health education has met strong resistance, especially from parents, even some teachers, religious leaders, and politicians, as it is considered a taboo subject, worrying that teaching students about sex and sexual health may end in may end in students making inappropriate assumptions that that it is a form of encouragement to try out sex before the right time, they claim. Yeah. Now, so there is a need to seek an alternative approach. So a proactive approach should be identified to address issues pertaining to sexual misbehaviors of adolescents. Because like it or not, one mistake a teenager makes in relation to sexual behavior can lead to a lifetime of regret. Yeah. So this alternative method that we are supposed to think about cannot appear too radical or controversial in the eyes of the public. However, the method should be effective enough to educate students in matters pertaining to sexuality. Now, literature, okay, literature based on results produced by studies and programs in the West, um, literature is able to alter perceptions and awareness of individuals. When studying literature, students react to experiences by exploring their feelings and personality, which helps them increase their self-awareness. It also helps students to grow as individuals and realize their roles and responsibilities in society. It also assists in personal advancement and growth. Now, this is something that I found. In America, literature has been successfully utilized as a form of rehabilitative therapy. For example, within the scope of education for the special needs students, literature has been used to complement the usual research-oriented approach to the field of child development and education. Okay, according to Landau, Epstein, and Stone. Children with disabilities have benefited through this approach. Then, another interesting finding, in Massachusetts, novels and short stories have been used to rehabilitate criminals in prisons. Okay, criminals in prisons. When they interact with good literature, criminal offenders are engaged with stories and with language that inevitably have psychological, sociological, ethical, and spiritual dimensions for them. Okay, this is according to Wexler, 1997. So if novels and short stories in particular can rehabilitate criminals, imagine what these literature can do to our teenagers. Right. This study examined the feasibility of using short stories in the literature component in the English language subject to teach sexuality education. Specifically, it aimed to determine the extent to which the use of short stories is effective in enhancing students' knowledge and awareness on issues pertaining to sexuality. Right. The reference of modules for guidance, yeah, for this research: Family Health Education, Sexuality, Pendidikan Kesihatan Keluarga, Sexuality, produced by the CDC Malaysia, and also the Guidelines for Comprehensive Sexuality Education, produced by the Education Council of the United States. So in this research, I referred to the content of these two modules for guidance. Now, the theoretical framework, I employed three theories, yeah, in this research. And first of all, Sigmund Freud's psychoanalytical theory. Now, Sigmund Freud says, he says that the human psyche can be divided into three: the id, the superego, the ego. Okay, so he claims the id is something that is inborn, innate. It does not know right or wrong, good or bad. Whereas superego, on the other hand, is the ideals of the society, in the society, the good, everything good, everything perfect. However, it's up to the ego. It's up to the ego, he says, that to make a balance between the id and the superego, right? And then the next theory that I employed is Vygotsky's socio-cultural theory, where it talks about the human cognition and learning, and says human cognition and learning are social and cultural rather than individual phenomenon, he says. So in accordance with that, we talked about ZPD, zone of proximal development, and also the MKO, the more knowledgeable other. And the next theory that I employed is Bandura's social learning theory, where learning certain behaviors primarily is by socialization observation. Yeah, this is important, observation, because not everything we learn through experience. Okay, so sometimes and very often it's through observation, explanation, and acquiring social feedback. Now, why did I choose short stories? Why not novel? Why not poem? Why not play? Right. Based on literature review, adolescents indicated their needs for sexuality education, but it cannot be introduced directly due to cultural taboos in Malaysia. Students generally have positive attitudes towards literature. Students react favorably towards reading short stories, but not poems and novels. Teachers adopt both teacher-centered and student-centered teaching methods and instructional strategies. Teachers adopt teaching practices they consider relevant and adaptable to the students to produce desired outcome. That means we are free to choose the right or the relevant or the correct or the suitable techniques or strategies, not just teacher-centered, not just student-centered, right? Dialogic nature of shared talk during discussions allows different voices to articulate different interpretations of a text, right? So social interaction through discussions is vital in shaping readers' responses to literary text. So this, based on all this, so there was a gap, right? So using short stories to teach sexuality education filled that gap. Now, statement of problem. Considering the pressing need to educate teenagers in our schools on matters pertaining to sexuality and the platform literature has provided in various fields of works and researches, this research attempted to study the feasibility of teaching sexuality education through selected short stories that dealt with issues on abortion, premarital sex, gender roles, and gender equality. And this was done to a group of students in a Malaysian classroom. However, for the purpose of this presentation, the focus is on premarital sex. The two objectives below guided the study. First, how can short stories be used to teach matters pertaining to sexuality effectively? Number two, to what extent can short stories be used to enhance students' awareness on issues pertaining to sexuality? Now, this is the overall methodology or data collection procedure. Now, the text used, right, is Husband Material by Malakai Edwin Vedamani, a Malaysian writer. The context variables for this research, a secondary school in Kuala Lumpur. The context samples was a group of 35 students from a Form 4 class. The process variables for this particular issue, sexuality issue, which is premarital sex, the teaching and learning session was a 2 40-minute periods, which employed the teaching strategies identifiable with the principles of Freud's psychoanalytical theory, Bandura's social learning theory, and Vygotsky's social cultural theory. And the issue focused on was premarital sex. And the product variable, the desired outcomes of the lesson, right? So we were hoping, I hoped it would enhance the students' awareness on matters pertaining to sexuality through the teaching of short story. Right, very quickly, you may wonder what Husband Material text is all about. It's about a girl, Shanti, a small town girl, gets the opportunity to further her studies in a university in Kuala Lumpur. Ravi Mama, her uncle, reminds or advises her about university life, right? Curious, Shanti asks Ravi Mama why he remains single, but he promises only to tell her after she graduates. There, in the university, Shanti falls in love with her university mate, Indran. They end up having sex. Shanti's hope of marrying Indran is dashed when he decides to marry a girl chosen by his family. However, she can't move on in life and continues the affair even after Indran gets married and moves to America to further his studies. Shanti meets up with Ravi Mama and asks the same question she asked him 4 years ago. Then the truth is revealed. Right. The story deals with issues pertaining to premarital sex, gender roles, and gender equality. Right. Why this short story? The setting and characters in this story are closer to the students' lives, right? Because it's Malaysian setting, university, right? The main characters in the story are students who have completed their secondary education and are studying in the university. And the story touches on issues related to premarital sex, gender roles, and gender equality. That's the justification for the selection of the text. I used mixed method design where data was collected through quantitative data and qualitative data analysis. Yeah, quantitative pre-test and post-test was employed. The use of retrospective post and pre-questionnaire was used for this. And for qualitative data, namely observation, in-depth interviews, and student journals were used. Now, the 40-minute period where we use, like I mentioned just now, it's a 40-minute lesson, 2 40-minute lessons. And what we did was, firstly, there was character analysis, right? Character analysis. Number 2, discussion, role play, and problem-solving activities. And these are all connected to Freud's, Bandura's, and Vygotsky's theories. Now, the lesson, okay, as I mentioned just now, it's from Malaysian secondary school syllabus. Yeah. So, for example, identified skills here, obtain information for different purposes by listening to and understanding a variety of texts. Number 2, language used for aesthetic purposes. Listen to, read, view, and respond to literary works. At the same time, I also identify the relevant content from the family health education module. Adolescent sexual behavior. 2.2.5, realize the importance of health, sexual attitude, and behaviors. And 2.2.7, evaluate issues related to sexual drives. Now, critical thinking skills like analyzing information, making decisions, and problem solving were also utilized. Okay, the lesson started with a set induction. Okay, I will quickly run through the lesson. Yeah. Sorry, Pan Irene, can you see the lesson? Okay, I hope you can, yeah, because I can't. Right, anyway, so going back to the lessons, we had some activities where I will cut short then. We have some activities involving, wait, let me go back to this. All right. So based on some activities conducted, right? First of all, it was a set induction where the students were shown a picture. They asked, what picture is this? Why do people get married? And then textual analysis. Your mother will be prepared. This is something taken from the text itself, yeah? Husband material. So students will ask these 3 questions. And then to set them into the mode, questions like, what do you think about Ravi Mama? Do you agree with what he said? Right? Are you for love marriage or arranged marriage? And then moving on to something from the text where there's a question, Ravi Mama says, do you know about contraception? Okay, the uncle asks Shanti, do you know about contraception? And Shanti nodded, says, I'm not suggesting you have sex, he says. But if you decide to, then for your own sake, take precautions. Remember, you are the one who gets pregnant, not that Krishna who was lovey-dovey with you, he continued. And don't forget, he says, you can catch VD or herpes, not forgetting AIDS. Then, in relation to this extract, 4 questions. The students were asked to address 4 questions. How can we prevent pregnancy? What are contraceptives? Can you provide examples of contraceptives? Contraceptives are suitable for married couples, but not for unmarried couples. So a topic was given for them to argue on. Okay, so this is one. And then they had to analyze the characters, okay, using the id, ego, and superego concept that was introduced to them, where id is synonymous with individual, right? The I's concept here. They were introduced this I's concept. The I, id, is synonymous to individual. Okay. S is the society. and E is the equilibrium that they are supposed to find between the two. Right, so in other words, this is how they were shown. It can be represented by the devil, superego by the angel, and ego is the balancing tool that makes the balance between the two. Okay, so these are some of the activities that actually was done with them. So now let me go to the findings. Sorry. Okay, now short stories make me aware of the need to express love and intimacy in appropriate means. Short stories make me realize that different cultures and religions have different values about marriage, lifetime commitments, living together, sexual relationship before marriage. Learning short stories makes me realize that I don't have to act on my sexual feelings, fantasies, and desires. Learning short stories makes me realize that sexuality is an important component in life that needs to be expressed in ways that society can accept. Now, based on table 1, right, the T-test analysis, right, it shows that all the items were much higher after the scores for all the items were much higher after the lessons as compared to before. Okay, this shows that there is improvement in their understanding and knowledge of sexuality issue. Then the observation is when they make a character analysis, where the students analyze the character. Indian was branded by one group as a smooth operator, a playboy, right? And they cited what Shanti said in the story, because Shanti says, I gathered that night that Indian was no virgin, he was gentle and loving. So then this is where they say, when they use the ego and superego, they said, his ego did not strike a good balance between what he wanted, which is his id, and what the society would have expected him to do, which is a superego. They agreed that the society would expect a man to marry the one he loves, right? Or if the relationship failed, forget his girlfriend and be loyal to his wife. Now, second is analysis of Shanti. Two groups were unhappy with Shanti and her ordeal. Okay, they say that she's stupid. Yeah, she said one group said she's stupid. She obviously let her id take control of the situation. It is obvious that she was yearning for sexual pleasure, as the line says. It was pleasurable, and I knew I wanted more of this kind of loving. So this is how they make a connection with the text. And at the end of the story, she knew that Indian was married to someone else, but she still, okay, but still she let her id control her, they say. Now, the analysis of the ICE concept, it says that they all agreed, right? Teenagers should be very careful in committing to a serious relationship. They should consider all aspects and weigh all the consequences before indulging in premarital sexual relationships. Next was the consequences of premarital sex. In one of the group activities, when the students were asked to talk about the consequences of premarital sex, so this one group said, it gives a lot of problems and consequences such as STD, sexually transmitted diseases. Social issue of dumping of babies will increase, and it gives problems to women as they will fear to have sex again after they get married. This can lead to problems in the marriage, and the problems are never ending. Okay, and then the next question was asked about ways to prevent pregnancy and give examples of contraceptives. So through discussion, the students were able to identify various ways to prevent pregnancy. Okay, one group where there was one student, actually he was a doctor's son, so he knew a lot. So he was the MKO, or the more knowledgeable other, who shared the information about condom, oral contraceptive pill, contraceptive implant, contraceptive injection, emergency contraception, and such things. Yeah. So they all agreed. Okay, the key thing is abstaining from having sex is the best way to prevent unwanted pregnancy. Now, student journals, right? The journals, students actually responded to the journal question. The question was how the text husband material challenged your own values, beliefs, and assumptions. So one student said, the text challenges my values because I believe in abstaining from premarital sex. Despite temptation and desire, Shanti should not have tampered with her own future. Another student A teenager, she says, a teenage girl, as a teenage girl, the part of the story which challenges me is when Shanti agrees with Indran to have sex without thinking about the consequences, which can lead to unhappy ending to both of them. Life is not a fairy tale, she says, and we should face the reality of life to become a whole person. It challenges me by making me think about the disadvantages of premarital sex. Right, next, the interview also got some information from there. Do you think short stories can be used to teach sexuality issues effectively? One student said, husband material actually can help us to think for ourselves whether we want to get involved with a person or not. Right, now another student 6, said that she realized if girls consummate premarital sex and get pregnant, they would be the ones who would be inflicted with the pain, not the males. So we will be the one carrying the baby. We'll be the one going through change, and the society will actually condemn us. She went on to condemn Shanti's decision in husband material to be Indran's mistress as an act of foolishness and morally wrong. Okay, these are students' words, yeah? Another question, would they able to learn and understand the issues on premarital sex better? The answer was yes. All right. So the students' words indicate the learning sexuality education through short stories indeed enables one to know the real deal, meaning the actual scenario behind the story. Conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, the findings show a significant increase in the students' ratings on the use of short stories to teach issues associated with premarital sex. The students agree, number one, short stories can be used to increase their awareness about the social problems related to sexual behavior. Number two, reading short stories that entail themes related to premarital sex enhances their awareness on the issue. The findings prove that students have become more aware of how to prevent pregnancy and the implications of using contraceptives. Students' responses indicate that they acknowledge human beings have sexual desires, but they do not need to act on these desires immediately. So, short stories can be a useful tool in addressing issues pertaining to sexuality among students of Form 4 in Malaysian schools. It is possible to educate teenagers in schools to be well informed about sexuality issues through the reading and analyzing of short stories. Students' level of awareness on premarital sex and issues related to it has increased after the reading and analyzing of the short story. Through this subtle but effective approach, sexuality education can be taught in a more acceptable and diplomatic manner. And finally, on a more ambitious note, it is hoped that the findings from this research would convince the Ministry of Education, Malaysia, to seriously consider including short stories such as Malakai Edwin Vedamani's husband material into the literature component of the Form 4 syllabus as a means of educating teenagers in matters pertaining to sexuality. Finally, some findings from this research suggest sexuality education through literature represents a potent solution to the quandary, indicates that failure to consider these areas together actually ignores potentially powerful ways that we might help teens in equipping themselves with knowledge and awareness on matters pertaining to sexuality. And it's advocate that suitable short stories that focus on sexuality issues be incorporated into the literature component of the Form 4 English language syllabus to shape teens' identities and understanding of sexuality. With that, I thank you.
Okay, Dr. Guna. All right, very interesting topic. And in fact, I think at IPG, at our campuses for the freshies, for the foundation, PPISMP, I think there is a paper that is offered. The course is called, it's called Contemporary Social Studies. Yeah, okay, TSLB 1094. And one of the topics there is actually sexuality. So I think this would be a very good text to actually relate, when we are actually discussing sexuality to our student teachers. I think that's really very good. And I think next I'm going to look for the title of this book, Husband Material by Dr. Vedamani. Okay.
Short story, yeah, short story.
Yeah, short story. So it's in a
There's
compilation.
A question,
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we are coming into that question now. What's your take on introducing sexuality education, like what you are suggesting here, to primary schools
school children. Okay, yeah. Dr. Guna, what's your take on that?
Yeah, thank you for the question. A very interesting question, because what my research focused on was on secondary school students, especially Form 4, considering that they're going to leave the school system and they may need to be equipped, well equipped with informed choices and information. Starting at a primary school, definitely I would say yes, it's a very good idea. We should start young, because actually now we already have in Pendidikan Jasmani dan Kesihatan about certain things about safe touch and those kind of things. We already have, but I presume, okay, I believe strongly that with relevant texts, especially simple short stories, which we can actually engage even primary school students, especially those in the upper primary, that should be good. I agree with the idea. Thank you, Dr. Annalisa, for the question. However, primary school, the methodology may be a little different. Yeah, something to think about. Probably future research can be done on that. Thank you for the question.
Right. Yes, Dr. Tengku, probably you would be called in to come up with a module for primary school kids on this topic, sexuality education. And Dr. Guna, you too should be in that. Okay, right. So if there are no more questions, I think thank you very much, Dr. Guna. Very insightful presentation for the society at present.
Thank you for
Yeah,
the opportunity to share. Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we are done with 4 paper presentations. Okay, now we would actually move on into the 5th now. Okay, the 5th paper is also a very interesting paper, right? And this is actually a paper that was actually done a research on by a team of lecturers, all right? Puan Ui Chun Meng, okay, Dr. Siti Rosni Muhammad Yusof, Fakira Akila Abdul Halim, and Sharina Ketipong. Okay, and the title of this paper is Scaffolding Online Learning Needs, right, during Movement Control Order, or the MCO, in the Institute of Teacher Education International Languages Campus. Okay, and this will be presented today by Dr. Siti Rosni Muhammad Yusof. Okay, Dr. Siti, the screen is yours. Welcome.
Thank you, Madam. My name is Dr. Siti Rosni. I'm representing my team, Madam Uy and a few of our students. We conducted this research last year during the first term of the MCO. So let me share our findings in my slides here. All right, the title of our research called Scaffolding Online Learning Needs During Movement Control Order, or MCO, in the Institute of Teacher Education International Language Campus. Myself, Madam Uy, Fakira, Akila, Sharina conducted this research. The introduction for this research is actually based on the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, which has affected us globally. Therefore, the effect of the pandemic actually affect our teaching and learning, whereby many of our students were unprepared and at loss because at that time there are coursework submission to be done. They have to learn on their own. Yeah, they have to address many technical issues relating to teaching and learning online. Therefore, we took the initiative, both of us, Madam Uwe and myself, took the initiative from our observation during the online classes that the students are facing with just a basic knowledge. Yeah, they just have a basic knowledge of digital skills such as Microsoft Office, emails, and using online application, and they took longer time to submit tasks due to limited knowledge of these skills. Yeah, and because they have to depend on themselves to solve most of the problem, so it was a bit stressful for them. Yeah, and aside from when they are staying in hostel, they have friends to help them. So during this time, we as teachers, as lecturers, plan to do an intervention for the students, right? So therefore, we try to come up with an intervention program, a scaffolding, which we call Elevating Digital Skills in Learning workshop on the 22nd to 25th June 2020. It is a series of four e-workshops with the duration of 1.5 hours for each session using the platform of Google Meet, and each session was conducted by a facilitator. Right, so this is the session breakdown, the summary. So the title for the first session was Peer Deck as Creative Tools in Interacting. The second session was working collaboratively via Google Docs, Google Sites, and Google Drive. The third session was creating quizzes via Google Forms, and the last session is creating e-books. Right, so with that, we come up with the research questions, three research questions actually. So the first question was, how relevant is each of the session in the e-workshop for the participants? The second session, the second question, how will the e-workshop experience be implemented by the participants in the future? And the last question was, what are the new online learning needs that the participant would like to acquire? So based on those questions, we come up with types of data collection. Therefore, we call it a mixed method design. So we combine two data collection methods, qualitative and quantitative. For the quantitative, we use survey question, and for the qualitative, we use open-ended questions. We use Google Form as the data collection tools. And also to analyze the quantitative data, we use descriptive analysis. And for the qualitative data, we use thematic analysis. Right. For the fourth session, we have different numbers of participants. Yeah. For the first session, we have 44 participants. For the second session, we have 56. 30 participants for the third session, and for the fourth session we have about 41 participants. So if we look at the breakdown of the session, actually the participant of our workshop does not only consist our students, IPA students, but because we did the promotion in Facebook, in WhatsApp groups, so that invites a number of participants among teachers and also alumni students, whereby they did came to IPA in previous years to do their workshop, right? So we have, for the first session, we have 42 students from IPA, 2 teachers or MTC participants from outside. The second session, we have 32 participants from IPA, but the teachers from outside increases to 20 participants from teachers and 4 persons from MTCP. For the third session, we have 17 IPA students, 11 teachers, and 2 MTCP participants. And for the fourth session, we have 26 IPA students, 12 teachers, and 3 participants from MTCP. Right, so these are their background. Right, so for the data collection, the instrument used to collect the research data was a questionnaire created in Google Forms. It consists of 4 different sets of questionnaires, right, for each session. So each questionnaire was administered online, to the participant at the end of each workshop session. Right, the questionnaires were designed using nominal data with yes and no answer. That was then analyzed as a descriptive analysis for quantitative data. And we also have open-ended question, as in qualitative data consists of 11 unstructured questions, and that allowed the respondents to answer in their own words without being constrained by the fixed set of possible responses. Right, these are the results. So we have 3 research questions. So for the first question, how relevant is the respective session in e-workshop for the participant? So here, for the first, second and third session, all the participants answered 100%. They agreed that the e-workshop was relevant to their needs. So 100%, 44 of them in session 1, 56 of them in session 2, 30 of them in session 3, and 41% in session 4. All of them agree that these workshop sessions are relevant to them, right? So for the question 2, how will the e-workshop experience be implemented by the participant in the future? Based on their experience in their and knowledge gained during the session, we asked them, we would like to know whether they are going to implement that in their daily routine and also in their teaching and learning later. So in the first session, their experience in learning peer deck as a creative tool in interacting. So the participant answered, they agree that peer deck can create interactive, fun and engaging lessons. It can incorporate various creative learning platforms. It uses 21st century learning elements, enhance students' productivity and motivation, right? Okay, and for the table number 5, it is for session 2. We would like to know whether our session 2 is effective for them, right? So they agree that this topic, working collaboratively using Google Docs, Google Slides and Google Drive, helps them to form group work, presentation, manage collaborative work, application, Google Docs, Slides, Drive, digital literacy, and also helps them to e-teach and learning, active learning, whereby in working collaboratively, they can do interactive activities, right? They can also do research and assignment, classroom management, practicum, and assessment. This is the impact of session 2, right? For session 3, creating quizzes via Google Form, the participants agree that the input from this session enable them to ease teaching and learning work. They could conduct e-learning and digital learning. They could have hands-on activities on the application and the digital literacy, do the assessment and also practicum, right? So for table 4, we would like to know the impact of the session creating ebooks, right? So the participants understand, and they responded that it is an innovative interactive session. By creating ebooks, it will become a teaching materials for them later. It also enabled them to learn the application, digital literacy, do assessment, assignment, and presentation. So from here, we understand that by understanding a new application such as creating ebooks, the students are able to diversify their interests and also the intention of using other types, not just the basic application that they learn, to enhance their teaching and learning. Right, for question number 3, What are the new learning needs participants would like to acquire? This is for us as teachers, as lecturers. We will use the response from our participant here to maybe design a new courses for them, a new workshops in our maybe in the planning stage. Yeah. So the new online learning needs are, first is content development applications such as developing video, interactive website management, creating creative writing, proofreading, etc. Right, and also the participants needs application for management purposes, yeah, for learning management system, understanding how to use social media as teaching and learning tools, basic computer skills, Google products, yeah, other types of Google products, aside from what they have learned, yeah, online conferences, and any possible application that is beneficial for teaching and learning. All right. For this also, about 7 participants did not answer. Probably they have acquired the knowledge that they wanted. All right. So from our research, yeah, we came up with this the discussion and recommendation. So first, the finding shows that interactive digital materials enable the participant to produce teaching materials that could be used in their teaching and learning lesson, manage e-learning activities, classroom management, as well as in school events, right? The second finding is the new learning needs such as coding. Yeah, there are new learning needs such as coding, augmented reality, and virtual reality are recommended for future workshop, as well as content creation using online application, ebooks, Google platform, video recordings and editing, screencasting, and using game-based learning or gamification such as Kahoot, right? Uh, Future online training should be conducted according to the prospective participant knowledge level, yeah, on the different themes of digital skills, as well as based on their work requirement. Yeah, all right. And also content development knowledge, computer skills, and self-determination to acquire new knowledge in technology, yeah, is crucial for the participant so that they will be able to be equipped with the new technological needs and challenges in their learning and their workspace. All right. So these are a few of our references. All right. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you. Back to you, madam.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siti Rosni. Yeah, I think the in thing now, we are all going through this. Okay, yeah, and I think it was really timely that you actually carried this out. Yeah, last year was the starting of all this, and I think this is really very helpful. How do you actually see this, Dr. Siti Rosni? Like, is this going to like take on the facade of our teaching in future? How do you see this? Right? Like
All
how
right.
we are all doing it right now, working from home, teaching from home. Yeah. How do you see that? Yeah.
Okay, madam, thank you for the question. It is actually based on as is where is basis, because different learning needs will depends on the time and the
Mm.
trends, right? When we conducted the survey, it was in earlier phases of the MCO. So maybe the learning needs at that time is to acquire technological knowledge, right? But currently, after almost 2 years in using online, I think most of the students are experts in this field already. So maybe their learning needs, their training needs, will be diversified. Maybe we have to put in more effort on planning for how to motivate students to learn online, how to create more active and fun learning online.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm.
We have to move on from just understanding or learning the basic skill of technology to engaging students activity online. Mm-mm. So it is
Exactly.
really, yeah,
Mm.
as is, where is, and then the demand of the current needs.
Mm. Yeah, exactly. Right. When I am learning a new thing daily, not only one new thing, but several new things. Like today also,
Yes,
so
yes.
many things we're learning to
Lifelong
adapt.
learning actually.
Yeah, all this technology, and I think a teacher who doesn't use technology is going to be left behind and replaced by a teacher who uses technology. Okay, so that's the end thing. And I agree with you. We learn a lot from the kids. Yeah, I think I practically learned a lot from the students also at the beginning, like how to set up
Yes,
a Google Classroom, like where, what, what to do and
yes.
all that. Thank you very much, Dr. Siti Rosni, and your team of researchers here. And I just thank you very much for the
Welcome,
presentation
madam.
today, Dr. Siti Rosni. Okay. Okay, we will now move on into the next presenter. Okay, our next presenter is Dr. Silva Nayaki Shanmugam, also from IPGKBA, right, from the International Languages Department. And her presentation is entitled Reading Strategies in Malaysian Primary ESL Classroom, Explicit or Implicit. Okay, Dr. Silva, the screen is yours.
Just give me a minute. I'm trying to share my screen. Okay. Can Diney tell me how I'm supposed to share my PowerPoint? Irene, can you see my PowerPoint, please? Malu. How do I share the screen?
You are using
In the screen, yeah. I don't know. Supposed to share here. Okay. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, a very good morning to all. I'm Dr. Selvanayagi and I'm going to do on reading strategies in Malaysian primary ESL classroom, whether it's explicit or implicit. Okay, this is how our teaching should be. Okay, welcome to our sharing session in intellectual discourse. And I am going to do on the research, or I'm going to share on the research conducted. That is, reading is actually a cognitive task which enables students
Firstly, to gain information, and the next one is have their imagination challenged and develop creatively, and fourthly, develop a variety of language expression and structures. So it is actually, reading is actually a cognitive process where our students have to know in detail how to go about reading and what they are supposed to do when they are reading. Okay, that was my research on. And my research was also to find out if teachers were teaching reading in the classrooms, in the primary ESL classroom, as if it is explicit or if it is implicit. Okay, and in our reading in our Malaysian English language syllabus, okay, actually it is MOE introduced the structured early reading program that aims to inculcate love for reading among Malaysian students. Okay, this was uh, informed in UNESCO 2004, but this program overlooked on the important aspects of reading instructions that includes teaching students reading strategies. Okay, we were teaching them to read, but we never taught them the reading strategies. Okay, in our primary school syllabus, there is also no mention of reading strategies, of which teachers need to make students aware in developing reading competency. We were basically telling them that they should read and make them read. That's about it. We never showed them any competence, or we never showed them any way of how they should go about reading. Okay, and the next one, thus the need to explicitly teach reading strategies are also not stated in objective of the curriculum. If we look at our primary school curriculum, reading strategies are not necessarily be taught to the students. Okay, but according to Law and Advisor 2009, the existing policy in the United States that the Malaysian school system is modeling, now we are modeling them, requires the use of scientifically based reading instruction. Okay, what is this scientifically based reading instruction? It is we teach the children the phonemic awareness, and then we move on to phonics, and then we look at fluency and move on to vocabulary and comprehension instruction. Yes, we do have phonemic awareness and phonics in schools. In the primary schools, we do have we start the standard ones with the phonemic awareness, and we move to phonics. But we do not look much into the fluency and the vocabulary. We move on straight to comprehension instruction. Okay, this is another ball game altogether, because students need the fluency and they also need the vocabulary. Okay, only then they will understand what they are reading. They will be able to comprehend what they are reading. If they are going to have fluency, yes, they may be able to read, but will they be able to understand what they are reading? So that is when we have to give them the vocabulary. Okay, so they need the vocabulary in order to understand what they are reading. Okay, then let me move on. For my research, I was looking at, or I looked at the theoretical underpinnings of reading, which is a meaning construction process between the reader, the text, and the teacher. Okay, so reading, it is a process between the text, the reader, and the teacher. In the instructions written uh, or the context of the classroom, which is actually a model by Randall and Andrew in 2004. Okay, so I was looking at this theory, and that is when I came up with my purpose of this study, it was actually to investigate the existing instructional methodologies used by Malaysian primary school English language teachers and to determine if their reading strategies are taught and how they are modeled and how they provide instruction in the 5 essential evidence-based reading of SBRI. Okay. In my research question 1, it is what are the existing reading strategies in the study site used by the group of 3 primary school teachers to teach reading in primary classroom. And my second research question, how do teachers explicitly model and teach the reading strategies in their classroom? Okay, my samples were from the 3 primary schools that I took. One was the National Language Primary School, the SK school. One was from the Tamil school and one was from the Chinese vernacular school. Okay, and all these teachers, they had almost 15 years of teaching experience in all the schools, and they were all very well versed in the language. Okay, so what methodology I used was I used my data collection was observation. Okay, I recorded the classroom, audio recorded the classroom because I am not, we were not supposed to video record, so I audio recorded the classroom and the written observation notes. Okay, I did have written observation notes for my triangulation, and with the audio data, okay, uh, to identify the pattern of practices used. All right, and I used pattern 1990 observation guide to help me to orientate the written observation notes during my observation. And my field notes were looking at the reflective feelings of the students, the insights of the interpretation, judgments and reaction of the teachers and also the students. Okay, I was looking at all this, and notes were taken to identify the reading strategies and identifying the explicit teaching strategies introduced to the students by the teachers. Okay, so I also used a semi-structured interview guide by Richardson, Anders, and Lloyd in 1991. This is to infer the type of practice the teachers were using or the teachers employed or their beliefs in fact. Okay, some of them believe that yes, they do give explicit reading strategies to these children. Some of them they said no. So I was trying to do a triangulation whether yes, they believe or no, they don't believe. Okay, that was basically what I was trying to do, right? And the results of my finding here, okay, is what are the existing reading strategies in the study site used by the group of 3 primary school teachers. Okay, first I was looking at the pre-reading. In the pre-reading, they were all, they did activate prior knowledge, and they were trying to elaborate on the prior knowledge. They asked questions and answers to engage the students. This was going on, but the teachers did not kind of find out or did not inform the children why they were doing the prior knowledge. Okay, this is what I was talking about, or what I am trying to say, that you should let the children know why we are doing that. Okay, that is the main idea. And then when we were looking at the while reading, most of the teachers, or all the 3 teachers in fact, were doing echo reading. Okay, so they told one of the students to read and the others followed. Okay, so they were doing echo reading, and the students were reading without any understanding, and there were a lot of pronunciation problem, and there were also a problem with the fluency. So the teacher did not stop them to correct them. Okay, and the students were just reading for the sake of reading. Okay, that was the echo reading. Students were agitated as they did not understand the text. Okay, at this point, what the teacher should have done is the teacher in the pre-reading should have introduced the vocabulary to them. As what we are following the SBRI, should have given the vocabulary so at least the students will understand, and the teachers should have taught the reading strategies explicitly as the students will be able to use it later, because this is a lifelong learning. So the students will use the strategies forever, even though they are not going to be teachers, but in some point of their life as readers, they may need these strategies. So we should tell them, okay, how to go about reading, how to go about inferencing, how to go about, if we are looking at comprehension per se, how to answer the comprehension questions. The teachers should have taught all these to the students. Okay, and for the research question 2, how do teachers explicitly model and teach the reading strategies? Okay, what they should have done is, first of all, they should have modeled it. First of all, we should show the students how to go about reading a comprehension passage, how to answer uh, 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 comprehension questions. Okay, we can always do it through shared reading. Okay, I personally feel shared reading in a primary classroom will be very helpful, because we do make the students think, ask questions, think aloud questions, and make them answer the questions. So they already have some kind of prior knowledge. We are activating their knowledge there, their schemata there. So we should model that to the students. Okay. The next one is we should give them guided practice. Okay. With this guided practice, the students can have independent practice. So based on all this, we can also give the students some kind of feedback, positive feedback, and we can have discussion. Once all this is done, we can leave them alone, and then we can have monitoring. Okay, but in this observation, in my observation, they only did discussion. That means the teachers only did discussion. There was no direct explanation for students to fall back on for later use. They did not explain to the students on how they can get the meaning, or how they can have some kind of prior knowledge, activate their prior knowledge, think about it for the students to remember better, and they know, okay, the next time this is how I am going to do it. So basically the teachers, the three teachers which I observed, did not use much what you call this kind of uh, explicit. Okay, they were all doing implicit. So if only they had done explicit reading instruction or reading strategies introduced to the students would have had better idea of doing their comprehension. Because basically in schools, our reading is on comprehension. Okay, so we will fall back to comprehension. We test students on comprehension. So that would have been better if the reading strategies were taught to the students. Okay, so my conclusion here is teachers should reflect on their teaching belief and instructional practice. Okay, and the next one, explicit teaching strategies aims to equip learners with strategies which are relevant to verifying purposes, the nature of text, the context, and development into strategic readers. Okay, teaching reading strategies explicitly helps students understand what they are doing and why it is important. So they have a reason. They will not do things blindly. Okay, this study makes a request to teachers, educators, and planners in the field of teaching reading in Malaysia to publicize explicit reading strategies instruction to enable them to become strategic readers. Okay, so I hope my conclusion will be explicit instruction is crucial to students as they can be trained to use these specific cognitive reading strategies when they come across difficulty in comprehending a text and be independent readers. Okay, so with that, that's the end. And these are my references. And thank you.
Hey, wow. Dr. Silva,
Irene?
indeed, this is, yes. Can you hear me,
Yes, Irene.
Dr. Silva? Okay. Yes, this is a very pertinent area for all of us. I think we actually deal with all this when we are observing the students for their practicum sessions. Yeah, when we
Yes.
see at times that, I think you would have seen that too. Our students, or not only our students, some of the school teachers themselves, sorry to say, they only teach reading, okay, per se, but they do not actually teach the kids what are they actually reading. For example,
Yeah.
like the comprehending part, they don't, all right, they don't do that, they don't deal with that. So it's just teaching them vocabulary, teaching them pronunciation, teaching them the meaning. So that's it. So there should always be that comprehension part, because even when we were in school, I think Dr. Selva, we were all doing reading and comprehension, and we also learn how to pronounce words.
Yes. That is true. I personally feel that the students should be taught on how to read and, for example, how to do inferencing, how to do skimming, how to do scanning. And the teacher
Hmm.
should tell the students, okay, this is how you infer to get your meaning. This is how you
Hmm.
skim, which I don't think which is happening now. We just tell them, okay, answer the question, and that's about it.
Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly. And
Happens.
all the skills, these skills are all taught, right? The skills are all the language
Exactly.
skills are all taught actually, yeah, during the methodology papers in the course, throughout the course when they are here. So I think this is a very important paper also for our students to get hold of. Right. Again, I am showing, right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the journal that was published. All right, practices and insights. So you have to get a copy of that. Right. Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Silva. Very
Thank you.
really in-depth study, in-depth
Thanks,
presentation.
Harry.
Yeah.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we now come to the second last paper presentation of the day. All right, this one was actually carried out by Mr. Tirumurti Marudai and me. All right, okay, yes, and the presenter for today would be Mr. Tiru himself. Mr. Tirumurti would be presenting. He's already here, ready. The title of this paper is Student Teachers' Perceptions of Creativity in Primary English Language Lessons. Mr. Tiru, if you're ready, you can come on board. Yeah, he's ready. Okay, thank you. The screen is yours.
Hello, good morning. Thank you very much, Madam Irene, the moderator for today. And today I'll be sharing with you some of our insights on student teachers' perceptions of creativity in primary English language lessons. And this study was actually carried out by me and Madam Irene, who's the moderator for today. Okay, so let me just move on to the content of the presentation. Okay, we are actually going to sort of walk you through first the background of the study, then the research questions and aims of the study, the methods, data analysis, findings, and conclusions. So these will be the areas that we will cover in this presentation. As for the background of the study, now for us, since we are looking at creativity So we feel creativity is an essential element in the primary school standard curriculum of KSSR. And this is in line with the 21st century learning that is so often mentioned and strongly advocated by the Ministry of Education Malaysia. And every lesson in the classroom should clearly include the creativity element through the activities planned and executed by the teachers. So actually, this is the one that actually we were actually trying to sort of investigate in our study, whether this element of creativity was actually highlighted in the lessons carried out, okay, in the classrooms. Okay, so in order to carry out the investigations, we sort of utilized our students who will be out for their school-based experience. And since this topic is also relevant, or study is also relevant to the course that we were actually carrying out at that point of time, which was Principles and Practice in English Language Teaching. And it was the semester 2, year 1 Bachelor student teachers. And one of the topics for that course would be Planning to Teach, where they are required to study interpret cases or syllabus to prepare how to write lesson plans. So we just felt that, oh, this is an interesting area where we actually can use students' presence in the schools during SBE and actually see whether these creativity element is actually embedded in the lessons carried out by the teachers in the school. Okay, and this will be specifically the elements in the KSSR where we're looking at creativity in the language lesson, where it sort of echoes by the end of year 6, pupils should be able to appreciate and demonstrate understanding of English language literary or creative works for enjoyment, okay, in the DSKP PPK 2011. And we're looking at what constitutes creativity. Okay, of course, creativity is a pulling factor that's able to draw the pupils to enjoy the lesson. And if there is enough elements of creativity in that particular lesson plan, of course, students will be much more interested in actually participating in the activities carried out. So this is to relate to the interest in promoting students' creative thinking has significantly increased since the 21st century and has become an essential objective of education. So we're actually trying to see, this was the finding of Formosa in 2016, and we're actually trying to see a relationship between creative thinking and creativity in the lesson itself. So in addition to basic language skills that the teacher is supposed to sort of enhance in the classroom, creative thinking is also a fundamental to the ESL instruction. So it's not merely in a lesson, it's not merely enhancing a student's proficiency in the language, but it's also in enhancing their creative thinking. So here we felt ESL teachers are challenged more than ever to design novel learning environments that do not focus exclusively on imparting knowledge, but rather on activating students' thinking abilities. So here, developing learners' creative thinking skills will enable them to assimilate information in different ways, apply their content knowledge in diverse manners, solve problems, overcome learning challenges, as well as improve their language competencies. So we're looking from the perspective of creative thinking here. And creative thinking is a process leading to creative learning through the implementation of new methods, tools, and content which stimulate learners' creative potential. What I've been sharing all this while is actually what we, what we see as element of creativity that should be actually included in the lesson plan, and how students are going to benefit by having these elements of creativity in the lesson itself. So this study is aimed to describe the level of creativity used by English teachers in their lessons and what made a lesson creative and its impact on young learners. So let's move on. From that aim, we are looking at the research questions. So this will be our guiding questions. So the research question for the study is, what are the student teachers' perception of creativity in the primary English language lesson? Because we are sending students out, our student teachers out for school-based experience, and they are going to observe their coping teachers carrying out the lessons. So how do they feel about creativity in the lessons carried out by the teachers? Do the teachers actually use the elements of creativity in their lessons? So this study aims to describe the student teachers' perception of creativity in English lessons conducted in schools around Klang Valley. Well, this will be our, how do I say, limitations. Yeah, we are only confining to students, sorry, to schools around Klang Valley, because that's where our students will be posted for SBE. Okay, and these are the methods that we sort of utilized. We used a qualitative approach, and the participants will be 4 test student teachers, and they are fulfilling the requirement for their coursework, TSLB 333, Principles of Practice in English Language Teaching. So one of their courseworks for this particular course is actually to come up with a reflective, how do I say, observation on what they see in the classrooms that was carried out by the competent teachers. So they are asked to observe and critically analyze the English lessons conducted by their coping teachers during the SBE, school-based experience. Okay, and this study, I think it's the same slide. Okay, let's move on to the instrument. Yeah. Okay, the instruments that we sort of used will be first a checklist. Now, this checklist is actually used to guide the observation to help students to write the reflection of their lesson. And the second instrument that we used was a questionnaire. And this questionnaire was adapted from a study done by Nedja and Hamada 2017 titled Creativity in the AFL Classroom, Exploring Teachers' Knowledge and Perceptions. Now, she carried out quite an extensive research on this, and we felt that the questionnaire that she sort of utilized would be appropriate for our study. Of course, when we adopted it, we made some necessary adjustments to it so that it fits to our requirement and to our students. So, and this, how do I say, this questionnaire will be seeking teachers' perceptions about creativity. And the items became the researchers. The items in the questionnaire became the researchers' guide to develop the 3 major parts in the checklist for this study. Okay, and these will be the 3 major parts. Okay, so these are the parts that we can look for in the lesson. First will be the engaging tasks, to see to what extent the tasks were creative and engages the pupil, because that's our focus here, and how the creative activities stimulate thinking, because whatever element of creativity that is embedded in the lesson should be able to, how to say, make the students to be thinking, how do I say, a child. So it should be able to stimulate the kind of thinking in the child. And then how technology was utilized in making the lesson creative. Of course, paper-centric learning, we can't run away from technology. We have to utilize it, okay, every now and then. So the reflections are the students' perceptions of the level of creativity and the effectiveness of the English lesson. Okay, this is how how do I say, this study was done. First, the checklist was distributed and the content briefed to student teachers prior to them going for their school-based experience. Of course, we have to sort of gather them, and we sort of gave them the checklist and actually went through the items and told them these are the things that we need to look for while you are observing the teachers. Okay, and they need to observe one teaching, at least one teaching and learning session of the coping teacher's lesson using the checklist. Okay, and they, after that, write a reflection on the observed lesson, and their focus will be more on looking at the creativity element of that lesson. Well, one thing I'd like to share is the schools that they went in, the teachers were really cooperating. Okay, actually they allowed them to actually sit through not even one but more than one teaching and learning sessions. So I think in that sense, I think we were able to have some good feedbacks, okay, or good observations from the students. Okay, and once once we sort of students have reflected and they sort of shared their data, it was subjected to some analysis. And of course, in qualitative approach, we are looking at emerging themes. And as we looked at the emerging themes, we sort of came up with about 30 different themes. And of course, that would be a big scope. I'm looking at 30 different themes. So what we did was we categorized them. Okay, we categorized the themes under 4 categories, which is 1, engaging and fun; 2, encouraging thinking skills; 3, encourages collaboration and teamwork; and 4, encourages the use of technology. And these emerging theme categories were developed based on the checklist to guide the observation and to help students to write their reflection of the lesson. So this is how it was categorized, all the themes that we sort of gathered from the analysis. Okay, and these are was our findings. We had engaging and fun types about 45%, encourages thinking skills about 20%, encourages collaboration teamwork 15%, and encourages use of technology about 20%. So this is the basically basic how do I say findings that we received from our analysis. Okay, and when we sort of went through the findings, I think, well, both of us think this is what the findings reflect. Okay, one, it reflected the positive teachers' perceptions toward the integration of creativity in the language learning process and the important creative thinking activities in the language classroom. So there was positive teachers' perceptions. The data supports the observation. So there was an element of how does creativity in the lesson. It was well integrated, and the teachers was like they were aware that it was important to include the elements of creativity in the lesson. And the teachers in Klang Valley were generally found to strongly agree that creativity not only improves their teaching skills, but also enables students to become better thinkers and active learners, which was quite interesting. Okay, this clearly supports the view, that teachers are for including creativity in their lessons. I mean, of course, there have been talks, I mean, where we always hear that teachers are not interested, their lessons are not engaging, their lessons are not interesting, it doesn't enable students to become creative thinkers. Well, these findings of ours actually says the otherwise. It says that, well, teachers do have support or do move forward into bringing creativity into their lessons. Of course, it is confined to Klang Valley, but I think it's representative of all teachers in Malaysia. Okay, if Klang Valley teachers are doing that, I don't see other teachers not following suit. Maybe the scale is smaller, not as big or not as in depth as how Klang Valley teachers are carrying it out. And they also agreed that inserting creativity in lessons can improve learning outcomes and promote students' language skills. Okay, not only the how do I say the content sort of is enhanced, but even the language skills are enhanced by involving creativity into the lesson. Okay, these were some of the findings that we sort of gathered out of our study. Okay, and of course, we also have how does it felt that since the data analysis supports or the findings support our hypothesis that teachers use, how do I say, creativity or embed creativity in their lesson. So we feel that having a rigid syllabus and teaching for exam purposes is actually restricting teachers' willingness to go beyond the conventional confines of the classroom. So teachers actually shouldn't be caught in the box, where they have to finish the syllabus and they must sort of prepare students for the exams. We should give them the space where they can actually explore. So when there's too much thought in trying to finish the syllabus and trying to move students towards exam purpose, it restricts their willingness to go beyond the confines of the classroom, and it also diminishes their creativity. Because when the students are when the teachers are pushed towards completing syllabus and sort of finishing the syllabus for the exam purposes, they are more geared into that priority rather than actually allowing themselves, providing them the space to think. Because we strongly feel, in order for the teachers to think, they should be given that space. They should be given the atmosphere where they can put on their thinking hat and actually come up with something creative. That element was actually was sort of compromised because of the eagerness of the admin or the eagerness of the the system itself in trying to push students to complete the syllabus and the exam purposes. This is things that we actually have to look into, okay? Because creativity can only be sort of cultivated if they are given the time and space to sit and think and reflect. Only then they can be innovative in whatever they do. Okay, and to conclude that, uh, this study revealed that most of the lessons had creativity. That means lessons carried out by the teachers in the Klang Valley had creativity that encouraged a lot of fun, promoted interactive learning, and provided a stress-free learning environment. Okay, that's basically what we sort of gathered. And this analysis further revealed that creativity gave rise to independent thinking skills, making way towards an imminent interest towards innovation among young learners. Now, this conclusion is confined to our analysis of the data that we derived or we got from the feedback of our student teachers who observed the teachers in the Klang Valley itself. So it's only confined to Klang Valley, but I'm sure it's applicable to teachers from beyond Klang Valley too. Okay, so this is what we found at the end of our study to conclude that creativity actually boosts, or enhances learning. Okay, and these will be our references, we utilize to sort of help us in coming up with study or developing the study. So with that, I end my presentation. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Tirumurti. Okay, yes, ladies and gentlemen, yeah, and the students who actually carried out this research in their school, yeah, they gave us the feedback, and they have already gone for their teaching prac first session. Yeah, they just ended their teaching practice for first session. Yeah, Mr. Tiru, they just finished that. Okay, yeah, and so I think probably you all are thinking of this word creativity. Yeah, this is actually one of the tenets of the KSSR, and I think it has been there, just that it has always been given that new outlook every time, right? And it keeps popping up, because without creativity there's not going to be fun, and I think students, they're not going to forge ahead into innovations. That's another field or area to look into too. Okay, and there is one question here. Okay, creativity is a crucial tool, exactly, when we're teaching and all. And how can we as teachers help our students to incorporate creativity in lessons? All right, Mr. Tiru, would you like to answer that?
Thank you for the question, Madam Irene. I think you're also the person to answer this question because you're part
My
of the
new
team.
answer.
Okay, right. Okay, but anyhow, I think, just to sort of to echo the question, I think it all boils down to the activity that we're going to carry out. If we come up with activities that actually promotes thinking, okay, that actually challenges them, I think automatically they're able to become good thinkers. So it's how creative are we in coming up with activities that makes them, challenges them to think. Uh, that is where I think the order is in the activities. I strongly feel about that. Okay, it is not so much on the teacher's presentation, but it's more on involving, engaging them in the activities that makes them to think. So the more creative the activity is, the more they are challenged, they are into the mode of thinking, and that actually develops their thinking skills. That's my how I say my feel on that. I leave it to you, Madam Ellen. What do you think about it?
Yeah.
Can I add on to it?
Yes, exactly. It's, yeah, that's right. How do teachers actually get that out from their students, by the questions that they feel to them, right? Let's see how you do this movement. Okay, come in front of the class. Right, let's see how you do that. Let's say you are a butterfly. How do you go about flapping your wings? Imagine you are a butterfly. How do you flap your wings? That is a very simple way of getting them to think about creativity. It starts from that little thing called imagination, and from there it goes on. That is what we want teachers to have. And you are very right. You said about engaging, that engagement, right? And right, sometimes we are very saddened also to see how classes are held, especially in these times where students have to learn from home. Yeah, of course, despite some of the places where, and in some families where they do not get the devices, right? We are talking about, we all have the devices, and even then sometimes it's so exasperating, right, when the internet is away giving away. So that is also very difficult to go through sometimes. How do we actually go through all this? Teachers, I think, we have to come up with that part called engagement with the students, right? Yeah. Okay, Mr. Chiru,
Thank you for adding
anything?
on, Madam Irene.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chiru, for the presentation. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, we have come to the final paper. Okay, now the final paper is entitled Online Assessments, Test Taking Strategies and Concerns Among Student Teachers. Now, this paper was actually researched by a team of lecturers too from IBA. Okay, and they are Jaswe Kaur Khatar Singh, Nur Adila Othman, Puan Zamrudah Ahmad Rashidi, Encik Muhammad Zakiri Abdul Rahman, and Dr. Shamini Kanaguru. All right, and the presenter would be Puan Nur Adila Othman. Okay, right. Puan Nur Adila, the screen is yours. Thank you. Sorry for the error. Okay, the presenter would be Puan Jaswe Kaur Kartan Singh. Okay, thank you. I will just give her a few minutes to be ready. Yeah. Okay, on to you. Puan Jaswe.
Slideshow. Ni dia punya. Ni saya punya. You have the ring effect. Penny Rock.
Very clear. What's that? Waiting for the slides.
Then it's not uploaded.
Okay.
So it's up.
Okay. All right. A very good morning. All right. My group and I will be presenting on the title of our research is Online Assessments, Strategies, Concerns, and Challenges Among Student Teachers. The group of researchers in my group are me, myself, Puan Nur Adila Othman, Puan Zamruda Ahmad Rashidi, Encik Muhammad Zakiri Abdurrahman, and Dr. Shamini Ganagu. Yeah. With the emergence of COVID-19 pandemic, there has been a paradigm shift from traditional face-to-face teaching and learning to online technology-enhanced learning. So online teaching and learning is not a new phenomenon in this 21st century, as it has been mainly used as a part of face-to-face teaching. Yeah? So the transition to the new normal involves the shift of learning space, delivery methods, responsibility in the teaching and learning process, and the learning evaluation itself. Assessment is the measurement of students' learning outcomes. It encompasses continuous and final assessment. And this situation demands a method of assessment that is safe, valid, reliable, acceptable, feasible, and fair. So therefore, this paper describes the different formats and types of online assessment, the strategies used in the application in continuous and final assessments, and the challenges faced by student teachers during and after online assessment taken while the COVID-19 pandemic is still rampaging. Right. What are the aspects pertaining to online assessment? Now, we are looking at these two aims. The first aim is to explore the strategies, concerns, and challenges faced by online test takers. And the second aim is to gain insights on the teaching and learning procedure and strategies to establish the manner on how online assessment supports learning. In our research, the key terms used are continuous assessment, which is also known as formative assessment, and final assessment. So these are the two key terms that we used in our research. For continuous assessment, it is carried out through various synchronous and asynchronous modes. And it is together frequent feedback on mastery and course material to modify instruction and learning experience. And this continuous assessment is also carried out using various platforms during lecture and tutorial sessions, which is done synchronous and asynchronously. Continuous assessment using online quizzes and tutorial tasks is also being conducted. All right, and this is seen as formative assessment of instructions and learning experience. And continuous online assessment is carried out by observing chat columns, engaging students' presentation of tutorial tasks by the lecturers. And this is being done on Google Meet, Microsoft Teams, or Zoom. The second key term is final assessment. So here, the final assessment is referred to as modified assessment to suit the nature of online assessment. And this final assessment is whereby it is used to in the Google Classroom. So lecturers have been instructed to set up the Google Classroom for the online implementation of either open book exams or take home tests. Yeah, an exam schedule is disseminated to students, and exam briefings are conducted to provide guidelines to clarify how students should handle the assessment. All right, and additional instructions pertaining to the customized online final assessment, such as the format, the duration of the assessment, as well as specific instructions to upload the answer scripts have been included in the question papers as well. Anyway, problems that occurred during the assessment include the issues of poor internet connection among students and some minor confusion due to new formatting of the question papers and mode of assessment. Okay, for this study generates the following research questions. There are two research questions, and the first research question is, what are the strategies used by the online test takers? And the second research question is, what are the concerns and challenges faced by the online test takers? Yeah. So let us look at the methodology being used for the research, for this research. All right. So the participants for this study are student teachers undergoing their teaching training study at a local teacher training institute, and a total of 70 pre-service student teachers completed the online questionnaire. These student teachers have experienced online test taking for the first time due to the Movement Control Order, the MCO, during the pandemic. And they were required to sit for the exam via online and were given a stipulated time to complete the written task. Yeah. And the instrument that's been used, there are two instruments. That is, one is questionnaire and the other one is online survey. So the instruments used in the study intended actually for the questionnaire, it intended to gather data on respondents' strategies and concerns when attempting online assessment. Whereas for the online survey, okay, due to the current pandemic scenario, this online survey form was disseminated to the respondents of the study. And the data generated from this survey was analyzed based on the two research questions. Okay, let us look at the first research question. What are the strategies used by the online test takers? All right, so the findings for these questions, we look at the before the exam and the while exam. Okay, so prior for the first one, pre-exam, yeah. So before the exam, the strategies used by the online test takers. All right, so prior to taking the exams, the respondents prepared themselves by taking down notes, referring to lecture notes, especially the PowerPoint notes provided by the lecturers. So the input provided in the PowerPoint is indeed seen as an essential support for student learning. Yeah, and they also use the strategy of selecting a suitable location with strong internet and connection, and no distractions were among the common responses generated by the respondents. Yeah, and various other strategies such as practicing on self-created mock exams, right, were also being used by the respondents. They also utilize techniques such as bookmarking, seeking out relevant online links and sites pertaining to their subject matter to facilitate the process of retrieving relevant information. Okay, besides that, they also use skimming and scanning reading techniques. All right, so they use these strategies to identify and extract information when they faced numerous reading materials for the purpose of answering the questions. The other strategy used by the respondents were mind maps. All right, so they utilize mind maps to consolidate information to assist them in meeting the requirement of the potential exam questions. There were other strategies used by respondents as well, such as in the preparation of the online assessment, such as rewatching the recorded lectures which were given by their respective lecturers, and also by working on the targeted topics and questions, such as sport questions and whatnot. So these are among the strategies used by the respondents before the exams, all right, for the preparation of the online exams. Yeah. Now, during the exam, there were also strategies used by the respondents in terms of technical, time, and information management. Yeah. So here, for the technical management, a few respondents used two laptops during the exam. All right. So one laptop was dedicated to answering the questions, whereas the other laptop was used to explore uh, the materials to answer the exam questions. So they practice safety precautions such as downloading the questions first into the laptop, hard drive just in case something unexpected happens. Okay, and most of the respondents also resorted to uploading the question onto the Google Cloud. Yeah, and these respondents created Google Drive folders to keep all the extra articles and materials. And some respondents resorted to taking screenshots of every answer that have been typed for all the questions. This is to safeguard themselves. Just in case anything happened, the answers are there. For the second one is the time management. The strategy used during the exam is the time management, where all the respondents attempted to answer the questions as soon as the examination commenced. Yeah, and all tried to answer the questions as fast as they could. All right, just in case they face any internet disruptions or connection issues. Yeah, so a few of them set a time limit for each question as well. Yeah, and they mostly divided their time according to the number of questions. They then proceed to answer the easier question first. Okay, and these students, in the findings, they suggested the use of uh, Pomodoro technique, whereby this application allows the user to set a time limit for each task and later provide a review of the task completed. This was indeed very useful for them, actually. Yeah. And the third one was the strategy used by the respondent is information management during the exam. All right, here the respondents had to optimize their time as well as glean the information as effectively as possible. Some of the respondents employed age-old techniques, such as answering the easy questions first, in addition to reading the test directions or instructions and identifying cues within the questions. Yeah, and furthermore, all right, in addition to that, all right, they also apply the strategies of using mind maps and 5W1H techniques. Yeah. which this was the common techniques found among the students. They use this when answering the questions during the exam. Yeah, unlike a conventional exam taking condition, the respondents had the opportunity to take a few breaks during the online assessment. All right, so they managed to take a few breaks in between answering the questions. They found that these breaks is indeed very helpful in getting them more focused and less stressful during the exam. Yeah. Okay, so that was the finding for question one. Let us look at the research question two. Yeah, the concern and challenges. What are the concerns and challenges faced by the online test takers? So this was the second question. All right. Here, the lack of internet strength and the stability of internet connection was the concern and challenges faced by the students. So here, for this research question, we have answered in the three. We're looking at technical, time, and information aspect as well. All right. So the first one is technical challenges. The technical challenges here refers to the lack of internet strength and stability of internet connection, and this was the biggest problem faced. All right, that prevents students from attending online classes and completing their courses successfully, as they fail to catch up with their online classes and classmates as well. So they even have got problems um, of getting their tutorial tasks done, yeah, due to the internet connection. And some of the test takers do not even own computers or laptops, and they had to resort to going to cyber cafes to complete their exams. Yeah. Okay. The second one is looking at the time management issues. Here, it refers to a few respondents which generally view lack of time, yeah, as one of the major constraints in terms of online assessment. These respondents say that they face difficulty in multitasking and coordinating the tasks to meet the demands of the exams. So these respondents are still novices as far as online assessment is concerned. So they are not given adequate time nor practice to explore the different online assessment modes. Okay, and let us look at the third one. The third concerns and challenges faced by the respondents is the information management. Here, most of the respondents lack of skills in selecting and synthesizing information. They also have got lack of skills in adopting and citing primary and secondary source information. They do not really have a proper understanding on how to cite the sources. All right, therefore, some of them totally lift the information from the text. Yeah. So, due to the findings of the study, there are few recommendations made. Yeah. The recommendation made here is to the institution, to the IPGM, all right, whereby we are looking at plagiarism detection software. So the first recommendation is regarding the plagiarism detection software. Here, it is highly recommended that higher academic institutions, all right, especially IPGM, to invest in a reliable plagiarism detection software services that searches the entire internet for copied information. Its students work to ensure that plagiarism is kept at its minimum. Yeah. So among the most prominent and commonly used plagiarism detection software are Turnitin.com, EVE, that is Essay Verification Engine, and GLAD Plagiarism Services. All right. There are many other online plagiarism checkers offering free services as well. Some of the well-known online plagiarism checkers are such as qtext.com, grammarly.com, copyscape.com and plagiarismchecker.com. Yeah, so these are some of the plagiarism checkers that we can use. But anyway, there is a good news that we got from an officer from IPGM that starting from October 2021, IPGM is providing the Turnitin software for its 27 campuses. Yeah, and that is the first recommendation by for this research. And the second recommendation is the student exam kit. Okay, when we are looking at the student exam kit, it is actually a set of procedures that will give a step-by-step guide. Yeah, looking at this is the student exam kit. All right, so it actually provides a set of procedures that will give a step-by-step guide on how to handle the online assessment for students to help them prepare and face online assessment. All right. So when you look at the student exam kit here, it is divided into planning and organizing. All right. So this is the first 30 minutes. All right. Before the exam, and then this is the write-up stage during the exam, and this is the checking and submission. All right. And the time allocation here is 30 minutes. All right. So the write-up stage will be depending on the time of the exam duration. Is it 1.5 hours or 2 hours? It depending on the paper. And these are the 30 minutes allocated before, and this is the 30 minutes allocated after the exam. Yeah. So here, the guide is being given very clearly, whereby the planning and organizing. Here, the respondents are guided or told to download the questions from the specified platform site. All right, and they need to check the time limit and set the clock. So here, one suggested way is to use the Pomodoro technique, whereby the students will be able to set their time limit for each questions, and if allowed, print and save copies of the test questions for their answers. All right, so they are being guided. All right, so if they can print and save copies of the exam questions. All right, so here it really helps the students in case they have or they experience any technical problems during the test taking, online test taking. And this during the write-up stages, students are also guided. So therefore, the students need to read the student exam kit before sitting for the online exam or assessment. Yeah. So here for the write-up stage, students are guided to read the question thoroughly and identify the resources that they need to complete the task. They need to retrieve and organize the resources briefly. They need to identify the process that they will be using to answer the task, examine the details and requirement of the questions, and they need to start working first on the outline. All right, so these are all the guide that's been given. All right, so if allowed by the lecturer, they are allowed to plan to write drafts in a word processing program if they are allowed and if they have got time. Yeah. So once they are done with that, they can copy and paste the answer into the designated field on the exam site. Yeah. So here the students are also guided to create a new word. When they create a new word page, they are told to save it under the required title. All right, so probably the index number, IC number, full name, and so on. So here, this student exam kit is really very important because the student seems to be lost, all right, on what to do during the exam, before, while, and after the exam. So here, this is a very clear guideline for the student, and this exam kit can be uploaded in the ETAMs as well. Yeah. So here, the checking and submission. All right, the students are told to check their work, review the accuracy of the answers, organize the folders, and so on. And they are supposed to upload the files as required on the acquired time. And they're supposed to follow the time limit that's been given for the exam. Yeah. So this is the student exam kit that is being provided by us, the researchers. Yeah. So we suggested that this guide student exam kit being uploaded for students as a guide during the exam, online exam. Besides that, we are also looking at the roles of the course coordinators, examiners, and the lecturers in charge. Yeah. So here, um, the examiners, the lecturers, and the coordinators are supposed to provide support using the student exam kit for students, has online test takers, and cover the following areas. So they need to say that how to get access to the question. All right, so they need to guide the students on how to get access to the question papers to the selected portal, especially for the new students. All right, semester one probably. All right, but anyway, all the students should be guided. Yeah, and the second one is how to sit for the online examination, the process. Yeah, and here they will also be providing ease of access to question papers and ensure ease in terms of technicalities related to format and submission of answer script. It should be simple, yeah. And the lecturers need to monitor uh, the answers of the students by using the plagiarism detection program, all right, so that to ensure that students do not total leave or copy and paste from any other material, all right, or any other, so here the lecturers will be monitoring the plagiarism through the plagiarism detection, such as Turnitin or any other free software available. All right, but since we are getting one now, it will be much easier, yeah, for the lecturers to monitor the plagiarism. All right, the content of the percentage of plagiarism in the answer. Yeah. So as conclusion here, online assessment will indeed be a crucial part of the new norm in the teaching and learning environment. So hence, as educators, ongoing efforts must be undertaken to ensure that the students are provided adequate scaffolding for online assessments. Yeah. As such, it is pivotal that current online methods are identified and reviewed to assist teacher trainees and student teachers and also teacher trainers so as to provide opportunities and ease the manner of administrating and attempting online examinations for them. All right. So these are some of the references that we have used in our research. Okay. So with that, I end my session. Thank you. Back to you, Irene.
Thank you, Wanjaswi. Okay, yes, a very in-depth, broad study that you actually carried out. Yeah, I mean you and your team. Yeah, assessment. And a point to take from here is that we will be getting our Turnitin after
Yeah.
so many years. Yeah, I think that is very timely now. In fact, it should have come earlier, but at least it is going to come to all our campuses, right? And we can now use that to actually check plagiarism. Yeah, and I also I'm quite drawn to this term plagiarism detection software. Right. So, are we like really behind other countries in all this, or there have been already this being used? Are these softwares being used in the private universities? And we are one of the last. Wanjaswi, you want to
Well,
comment on that?
I think some of our lecturers in IPGM are using it, the turn it in, especially, but then it need to be, what do you call that? We need to get it. But now, since, but in the higher institution learning, most of the higher institution learning, they are already using this plagiarism software already. And well, there are other methods as well. So some of our lecturers in IPGM, I believe they are using the free plagiarism software to detect the plagiarism among the students' write-ups. Yeah, even in the assignments. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, I think it is very important also to actually go along these lines because we need our students to actually comply with all this, right? We always tell our students, get the ideas, but use your own words to write. You must know how to express, your ideas and all that. So this is a good training ground also. With or without Turnitin, I think they should make it a habit, right, to
Yes,
write
very
it
true.
down.
Yeah.
Okay, since there are no other questions, okay, so we have come to the end of our colloquium, research colloquium. Thank you, Ponjaswiko. Right, ladies and gentlemen, yes, we have all, right, we have presented and we have let you listen to 8 presentations of papers, all right, which have been published in the English Language Department's journal, all right, ELD journal, okay, of IPG Campus Bahasa Antarabangsa, published last year, 2020, and this is a yearly, issue, right? We are having, and even for this year, 2021, it is all going on, all right, yeah. So, ladies and gentlemen, that calls the end of the session, and have a good day. And thank you very much for your participation and for your contributions of questions. Thank you. Till we meet again. Goodbye.